Okay, welcome to How to Be Unpopular with Arlo Eisenberg. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Yes, it has. I originally emailed you or messaged you over Facebook in 2012, I think, and the discussion started then. So that was what, 8 years ago?
Well,
It never
yeah,
happened. I'm happy that it's took this long. I think this is an excellent point in rollerblading's history to chat with you.
great.
Really curious.
Cool. Yeah, I'm curious to see where it goes. I've been doing a lot of podcasts, I guess, since the pandemic. There's been a lot of content put out there, which has all been fun and interesting. But, I've kind of in the back of my mind always been kind of looking forward to having the discussion with you guys because I feel like we can go some interesting places.
On that note, I think there's so many places we could start. I think the best place to start, topic wise, is going to be wrist guards.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
sunglasses for your wrist.
exactly.
Uh-huh.
You made wrist guards look so fucking badass. I'm surprised
Well,
they didn't like catch on more.
yeah, I'm surprised they didn't catch on like in the mainstream. Like people start wearing wrist guards just like to go to the mall and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't know how cool they ever looked. I mean, for me, I guess for most skaters, your wrists get really banged up. So it was quite essential, actually. I was really happy to have a wrist guard sponsor and to be able to wear them. And I thought that what Scott did with the company, sort of turning wrist guards instead of just sort of a utilitarian, bland black Velcro thing into something a little more designed, I thought was a stroke of genius. So yeah, Pawn was a pretty cool project. And honestly, I was mostly just sponsored by Pawn, and we happened to do one epic commercial for one of our videos. But beyond that, it really was that was mostly Scott Walker.
I
That
found that
commercial was incredible.
the
Yeah,
commercial was
commercial
incredible.
great.
But
Yeah.
like how skiers use poles, it almost seems like your wrist guards was part of your style. Like when I think of Arlo in my head, I see you
Yeah.
that the kind of balled fists and do you think that they aided the Arlo style? And do you feel weird not using them now? Like, were you against curved wrists or?
That's funny because I never thought about that, how they might have like influenced or affected my styles. So you're probably right. And in fact, when I went to Winter Clash and the guys did kind of like the Arlo like tribute with all the guys dressed like Arlo, they all wore the Pawn wrist guard. So I guess that definitely was kind of like part of the what's it called, the milieu. I don't know. But yeah, I think that there was something kind of like forced and unnatural about wearing wrist guards. They do keep your hands in a position. And so I was happy when I could not wear them. I don't feel strange when I skate now and I don't wear them. I used to actually also wear a knee brace every time I skated, just sort of like a sleeve that I'd pull over my knee. And I don't do that anymore either. And all that feels good to not have stuff on you. But yeah, I suppose it probably leaves you a little more vulnerable.
Is there recorded evidence of you doing a mizou? I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
There is?
I mean, if I'm gonna have to like name a video and a time signature, I have done mizous. I don't know how. I'm jogging my. Are you saying like any kind of mizou variation, like do sweat stance and fish? I mean,
Just like a straight mizou. I feel
mizou.
like there was you
kind
maybe
grind is what I'm trying to think of.
kind
What's
grind.
that?
I'm sure you've done kind grinds and sweat stances, but just a straight mizou. That I'm pretty sure there was an article where you talked about you weren't into the tricks that looked very rollerblading-y, and the mizou was one of them. So that you were not an Audi trick person. So I don't think I remember you doing just a straight mizou at all.
No, it's definitely not something that I would have ever done very often. It's not like a sort of a staple of my trick vocabulary. But I'll do them occasionally. I have done them, to answer your question directly. And like,
did you have a negative perception of mizous? Did you think they were a bad looking
Joey
trick?
was touching on initially, because my background, I came from skateboarding, and I kind of had that aesthetic like ingrained into my brain. And so when we started like building a trick vocabulary for rollerblading, there were things that initially to me looked so kind of bizarre and kind of so far from the kind of the aesthetic, you know, with a skateboard, you're limited to kind of like the positions your body gets in. They're sort of fixed to this like shoulder width stance, you know, on the board mostly. And so once, you know, a mizou is like really, I think, Joey, did you describe it as open? Or
Yeah.
no, you described it as outie.
There's innie and outie. Yeah.
Yeah, but it sort of gets in like sort of this like, you know, fencing, like en garde position. Like there's something kind of real, I don't know. It's just, it was out there, you know? But after a while, you know, your aesthetic or your taste adjust. And I started to appreciate kind of the rollerblading tricks that were uniquely rollerblading. Like that almost became an added asset and virtue. There are still tricks that don't look great. Like I've never really, I've never been able to get on board with negatives. I mean, I appreciate the difficulty, but for some reason they always look strange to me. They don't look as beautiful as standard tricks. But that's, you know, I don't, even if we each have our own preferences, I would never be so presumptuous or petty to say tricks are more worthy or better than others. I mean, I'm aware of my own biases, but I don't think that it matters what tricks people choose to do, essentially.
I think you can say that now, but I think during the time when you were like the top dog, you were coming up in a time where, you know, rollerblading was brand new. And it seems like you did kind of take responsibility for, you know, what kind of tricks were cool and what kind of aesthetic. You were trying to kind of steer rollerblading in a certain direction, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, the opinion I just expressed to you now is a lot different than the opinion I had when, you know, we were in the thick of things. And as you said, we were trying to kind of like build a trick vocabulary, build a culture. And so I did have strong opinions about those things. And back then I was less passive about my opinions. I wanted to kind of put an imprint on the trick vocabulary and the culture. And there were things that I thought were less attractive and I thought less worthwhile.
Right.
But, you know, in the end, sort of the streets will decide and skating will decide, and the vocabulary becomes what it becomes. And you just sort of either go along with it or you just sort of be a petulant, you know, petty contrarian the rest of your life. In fact, even the fact that you brought up mizou. So I did a lot of commentating for rollerblading events and stuff, and I always called it mizou, you know? And I remember I used to always see the comments and people would always say, I hate how he says mizou. But like, you know, I don't know, when they invented the trick, it was called a mizou. But then I guess as people were doing it on the streets, they were calling it mizou or something. But so instead, you know, there's a limit to how far I'll try to push my own opinion. If I lose, if the conventional or the consensus is that it's called a mizou, I'm not going to be a holdout, you know, trying to, you know, shake my fist and say, no, it's really a mizou. It's really a mizou. If it's called a mizou, I'll call it a mizou, you know?
Yeah. Did your vision of skating like ever lead to any altercations with other people, like where they would do a certain trick or something and you would say like, no, you shouldn't do it like that? Or like how outspoken were you about your vision of what skating should be?
I don't know if there were any like face-to-face confrontations necessarily about like tricks or, you know, anything that specific. I mean, I had kind of my vehicles, sort of my platforms for getting my opinion out there. So we had Daily Bread magazine, I had Senate, we did the hoax videos and stuff. And so I had plenty of opportunity to kind of get my opinion out there. It wasn't really, I didn't have to go and have a personal conversation with anyone. So yeah, and there were, you know, my whole universe was skating and skaters, that all the people I lived with, all my friends, all the people I worked with, we were all skaters. So we probably had these conversations all the time, you know? But yeah, that's the most I can say about it, I guess.
Yeah. You guys must have had a good fucking time back in
You know,
the heyday.
It was fun. And even more than the actual tricks themselves, because, you know, tricks were coming from everywhere and it was cool and exciting and, you know, stuff was being invented all the time. But the trick names, that did get contentious a lot because people, you know, that was something people had opinions on and people sort of would try to stake their flags and, you know, get the trick names. And because we did, we exercised sort of an outsized influence with Daily Bread, we would really try to steer the naming conventions. And there wasn't always consensus on those. To this day, there's still, you can see kind of some residual effects of that. There's still some sort of, lingering confusion or sort of disagreement about trick names.
Yeah.
But yeah, that happened quite a bit. Barfignugan was, I think, a pretty prominent one. Even Royales, because at first they were kind of called shifties. And I think for a long time in Australia, they continued to be called shifties. I think even before they were really properly Royales, people were just kind of doing this thing where you turn your body a little bit and you sort of tweak your feet over, but they weren't properly getting laid down all the way. Brooke named the Royale, and he originally, I think he wanted to call the fast slide the Royale, because I had just started doing fast slides, and he thought that'd be a cool name, but I kind of had the idea I wanted to call it fast slide. But so I guess he still had this trick name, this cool name that he wanted, just sort of hanging around. And so for the cover of one of our catalogs called The Catalyst, we put Brooke doing a Royale, and we called it the Royale. And I guess that was the beginning of calling the Royale the Royale. But you can still, but there were still pockets calling it a shifty. And then there was a shifty Royale.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's very cool that you were involved with the creation of a language, essentially.
Yeah.
Like, how many people can say that? It
is cool. And
it's unique.
One of the, talking about sort of the kind of the shortcomings of creating a language, or one of the problems I think that still lingers. I pointed this out a few times. I just think it's interesting, but the front side is still a trick without a name, right? It's one of the most standard, most basic, most foundational tricks to rollerblading. So many other tricks are built off of it, but it never got its own name. So really the way we describe it is just by is how you get onto it. Either you do a front side or a back side. But I always started to do the thought experiment. If you were looking at a photo of it and you didn't know how someone got on, what is the name of the trick? Like, you can look at a sole and know that it's a sole, whether you know how they got onto it or not. But if you're looking at a front side or a back side, you don't know what it is. You have to know how they got onto it in order to describe it, essentially.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. So I always thought that was kind of a funny oversight. Yeah.
It's interesting. We're going through the same thing right now with wizard skating, the creation of the language around it. It's so important to be able to, communicate to your peers about the moves that you're doing.
Yeah.
And the language is falling short still. We're in those early stages.
Yeah.
So there's some parallels there for sure.
What kind of names? Describe some tricks and some names you've got.
Well, there's currently contention about all the different cross rolling variations.
Yeah.
Because you can roll forwards with your legs crossed with either your right leg in front or your left leg in front, and you can roll backwards with either right or left. And there isn't a clear way to kind of define those parameters. For instance, if you're doing a fast slide, cess slide into a fakie cross, you can say, I want to do a fast slide, a right leg fast slide into a fakie left cross or a fakie right cross. Those are two different things. Yeah. But to communicate that is clumsy because other people don't have the those things aren't clearly defined. We've kind of decided it's almost like 4D rollerblading because of the complexities involved with different leg positions, and it's complicated, but we'll get there.
Yeah, it is. It becomes really technical. That the cross problem is really similar to what happens with unities. Right. There's so many different ways to describe them. And for me, that's one where my eyes just sort of glaze over. It's so hard to get your head around and to be able to think in real time what's actually happening.
And there's still arguments about it. The Savannah.
Right, argument. Savannah, alley unity, all this stuff.
You actually didn't say any of the names, Todd. Say a couple names.
Of wizard moves? Well, okay. Well, there's different groups of moves. There's all the pivot point maneuvers. So there's toe pivot, heel pivot, warrior pivot, wizard pivot. And then you have some of the fakie cross moves. I like to use acronyms. So I use LC or RC. So LC is left cross with your left foot in front. RC is right cross with your right in front. And then there's the fakie versions which I like to call FRC, FLC. So it's fakie left cross or fakie right cross. I like acronyms because they're shorter to write. Like I always think about it as writing a trick idea and what's most efficient. So I'll use FLC is quicker than writing like fakie right cross. And so FRC, FLC. And then you have different carving variations. So you have the gazelle, which is carving fakie into forwards. And then you have lion, which is a gazelle, a 1 foot gazelle.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's scratching the surface of this language that we're creating.
You know, those gazelles, but it sounds like you're describing, if I've got it right, sort of where you carve and you're sort of doing a shuffle into the other direction. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah.
B-Love used to call those sandies because he would do them on the boardwalk on the beach, and you know there'd be a little bit of sand on the boardwalk, so it gave like sort of the perfect surface for hard wheels to do it. And so he called them sandies. He would do that, like shuffle, change of direction.
I like that. It does feel really good on a dusty surface because it's a little bit slick. Yeah.
It's like a cess side change of direction, right? Little cess slide transfer. Gazelle, I like that.
Yeah, and then if you do it really well, you catch the gazelle because you kind of catch the energy, and it almost feels like you're gaining speed as you turn to forward. It's such a cool feeling.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how do you get the names out there? How do you like disseminate that information?
Good question. We haven't disseminated it like officially. There's been no dissemination. It's kind of like idea sex. It's just being thrown out there, and then the masses will decide, you know, what catches on and what doesn't. I think gazelle is pretty universal at this point, but there's other things that are internal. Like when I say toe pivot, heel pivot, those are internal use right now at Mushroom Blading headquarters. Same with the FLC, FRC. A lot of those, I think a lot of people, a lot of crews have their own kind of terminology at this point. And over the next decade, probably as people communicate more and more about these moves, you know, universals will be established.
Yeah.
It's not there yet. It's still in the primitive stages.
Are there like message boards or forums where you guys are communicating with other like free skaters or wizard skaters and stuff like that?
There are groups on Facebook. I'm not on like the wizard skating group. Joey, are you on that group? I think right now, like it's a lot of just commenting on, you know, edits and things. It's raw, it's rough.
Yeah.
I think eventually we're gonna work with Leon to like create a PDF of like all the moves. But I think Leon is hesitant to do that because he doesn't want to be like no one wants to be the authority. Like you were saying, you don't want to say like, this is what it is. You want to let it happen naturally. You know, you want to see what catches on and let that ride. So no one wants to be like the voice of no one wants to be the language police.
Yeah. But it is a line that you have to walk though, right? Because if you're not creating a language, you're not getting it out there, then you're not building a language.
Right.
And yeah, you can kind of wait for it to happen naturally, but that really doesn't even mean anything. That means each little pocket of skaters is just sort of on their own to call it whatever they want. Without a forum for it to get out there, then it's
you guys were lucky because you had a clear like magazine with the move, and you could have a caption that said, this is a top sole, this is a unity. And that was kind of disseminating that terminology out there.
But we weren't lucky. We made a magazine.
Right. Okay.
Speaking
of
made it happen. Making a magazine.
We need a magazine, Joey.
Well, no, you don't. Not in this day and age. All you need, you already have it. You need to use whatever, you know, tools you have at your disposal. Use social media, use the internet, and just communicate with the people that are already doing it. And be a part of, start the conversation. You don't have to, you know, rule it with an iron fist, but someone's got to sort of like moderate the conversation.
Right. And I think that's up to Leon. Like we've discussed that, like when Leon creates edits and things with wizard skating, he shows it in a more simple, digestible kind of way. He doesn't overwhelm the viewer. And then there's us, there's me and Joey. We like to just overwhelm the shit out of the user or out of the viewer and make it like confusing about what we're doing. That's kind of our place. So I don't think it's, we enjoy confusing. We don't enjoy educating.
Yeah, you had that amazing quote about you can't just be two guys jacking each other off about the latest combo you did on the handrail. Sometimes we're two guys jacking each other off about our wizard
That's
moves.
us.
Yeah.
Um,
It's it's definitely true that there is well, with anything that people get passionate about, you know, there's always, this is sort of an expansion on that quote and that idea, but there's like jazz and there's pop music, and the
Right.
more you get into something, the more there's a tendency to veer towards jazz, which gets so technical, and it's mostly only meaningful to the people that are really into it because they understand all the intricacies of what's happening. So yeah, there's just always kind of those competing ideas.
For sure, and there's a place for both.
Speaking of magazines, you never talked about Skater Magazine, did you? In any of the podcasts you've done?
I feel like I must have, but let's do it.
I feel like you haven't. So was that your attempt at doing a Big Brother for rollerblading, and it only lasted one issue?
Yeah.
What's the story behind that?
So I feel like I'm going to make some stuff up that I feel like is right, but I don't know if it's actually true. Because why did we want to do Skater when we already had Daily Bread? I'm guessing that there probably were some creative differences between Angie and me. And there were probably some things that we wanted to do kind of with Senate that Angie was not comfortable with us doing with Daily Bread. Angie, I think, was always kind of uncomfortable with the relationship between Senate and Daily Bread because I was kind of at the helm of both. And she didn't want Daily Bread to be seen as just kind of like an arm of Senate. And it's kind of hard to make that distinction when I'm basically the editor of Daily Bread and I'm also doing Senate. And so I think there was a sort of a constant effort, which is completely reasonable on her part, but to sort of kind of rein in my impulses or sort of some of the creative things that I wanted to do to make Daily Bread not look like just another Senate, essentially. But I still wanted to do those things. And so, the reason I was, editor at Daily Bread, the reason I spent so much time on Daily Bread is because I really loved it as a forum for communicating and sort of cultivating ideas and getting ideas out there, and just sort of, I just thought it was a real powerful medium. And so it was always frustrating to not be able to do all the things I wanted to do. And so I think I always looked toward sort of having my own forum with kind of no restrictions. And that's kind of how the idea of Skater started to come about. Carlos Cole, who is a friend of ours, he worked for, and I don't know how true or how writing this is. He worked for a mainstream publication that one of their magazines was Skater Magazine. It was this like sort of obscure, little used, little known magazine. It was kind of like a mainstream roller skating, ice skating, inline skating, you know what I mean? Just sort of like all purpose skate magazine called Skater Magazine. And I think maybe he said, they're not really doing anything with it. If you guys want to use I don't know. That's what I'm saying. It's so weird. I don't even know if this is all true. But so we're like, hell yeah. And so I made a new logo for the masthead for the typeface Skater. And we started coming up with story ideas, and we decided Rawlinson would be our first interview. And yeah. And so we put Rawlinson on the cover, and we, put John. I don't even know if I can say this now. So I'm, just out of an abundance of caution, I'm not going to say what the cover says, because I feel like we are in such like a hypersensitive time. Like, even though this is a whole nother discussion. I don't know if I need to derail everything with this. I have no problems with what we put on the cover. I still think it's funny. I think that whatever. Like I said, I'm not gonna get into that. But it said, "Who's the Johnniest?" N-word, but it didn't say N-word. It said basically it's sort of like the hip hop version, right? What people use in songs and stuff. But that's what we said. And honestly, back then, I'm just trying to think of how controversial. I don't think it was that controversial. Like now, it probably would be a big deal. Back then, I don't think it was. I mean, we knew it was funny and we knew it was kind of provocative, but I don't think it was that big a deal. You know what I mean? There weren't like people raising their pitchforks or showing up at the Senate doors like with what they call torches and pitchforks. But and you're right. And so we did one issue. So it's hard to make a magazine. So, God bless Angie for how long she was able to do it, and to Justin and to anyone else who's like, stuck with it for a long time and put out consistent content. I mean, it's hard to do. So, and
why wasn't there a second issue?
I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe just because we were so busy with so many other things. I mean, we were running Senate. I was still a professional skater at the time. I mean, I think we sort of wanted to do it and we did it. And I think maybe we got it out of our system, and then we just sort of like, okay, we probably would have harbored some idea that maybe there's going to be a second issue, but there never was.
Joey, do you have that issue?
No, I never got it. I just remember posting the cover a while back on Instagram, and I think somebody was like, "Oh, you better take that down. Like Rawlinson's a professional something now," and it's like, "Oh shit, okay."
Rawlinson had such a good antagonistic personality in rollerblading. I always loved Rawlinson.
Yeah, he loved to play the foil.
Yeah,
he got an award one year at every year we used to do the ASA championships, and then it'd be followed by an award ceremony, and he got honored with something, but and he just relished this moment. But he gets up there, in his way, like with his swagger, and he's just like, first of all, I'd like to thank none of you, and he just goes into his whole bit is like, the asshole.
Yeah, that was in Standfast, right?
Yeah, it opened. It opened the Senate video.
So good.
Right.
So, how's your memory, Arlo? There's all this stuff on CTE, and there was Dave Mira, Biker Sherlock. Tragic stuff happened to them, and there was also that video of Renee Hallgreen where he basically had a quote that he regrets his skating career because his memory and his mind is so damaged. I know you had some head hits in videos. There was the one in the Hoax. I think there was a really bad one in Hoax 4 when you were in Israel. And obviously there must be more that haven't been recorded. So how's your mind feeling, and how do you feel about all this CTE conversation that's starting in action sports?
I don't know. I think it's interesting, but I don't know. There's so much that we don't know about CTE, so much that I don't know. It's hard for me to have an opinion. I think it's worth watching, and it'll be interesting to see what we learn from it. But I don't know. What happened to Mira was a shame and tragic. I don't recall if I saw the quote from Renee. If I did, I'd forgotten about it. You know what? I just don't know. I don't know enough to comment on it intelligently.
Do you have any symptoms? Because you had some pretty significant head hits. Do you ever think like, oh, I probably feel this way because of that head hit, or do you feel perfectly fine these days?
It's hard to know. I mean, I don't have anything to compare it against. I mean, I'm getting older, and my memory's never been that, specific anyway. I would not say that I'm aware of any symptoms that I'm aware of. Yeah.
It seems like you're very lucky. I mean, for all the, very aggressive skating that you did, you took some pretty good falls and everything. You seem to be pretty healthy in your, what are you, 47, 48? Like, look at you, you beautiful bastard. You're fit, you're happy, you're healthy. Some people, they went hard in their early days, and it really shows now that they're your age. You seem like you're just killing it,
Sure.
physically. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And I'll send you my calendar.
Thank you. Please do.
While I was skating, and I had a lot of bad or half-formed ideas that now I don't think, I don't look back on them so favorably. I think that they were kind of bad ideas. But, I was real idealistic and real passionate about things, and real happy to let people know what my opinion was. But so I was reluctant to view rollerblading or skating as a sport. I didn't want to be seen as an athlete. I had more of an artistic take on it. And I saw skating as something that you did, it was a form of expression. And so to train for skating to me seemed unnatural. It seemed to be sort of painting skating as something other than how I envisioned it or experienced it. And so I didn't work out or I didn't view myself as an athlete. I skated. That's what I did. When I skated, that was training for skating. Yeah. So it wasn't until after skating that I started getting into working out. And in fact, I've looked at some old footage or old videos. I can see sort of like at the end of the career later, like I got like a pot belly. I'm looking a little pudgy. Definitely wasn't, the image of health. And it was just kind of on a lark that I discovered fitness or started working out when I worked at Paul Frank after skating, a job that Randy Roadhouse got me actually. But they made an offer basically to their employees. They paid for us to go work out at a gym. And so I'm like, cool. So we started working out. And that was the beginning of fitness for me, it becoming as part of my lifestyle. But so when you say that I look great now, I appreciate that, but it's because I've been working out. I keep myself fit, and genetics, right, play a role in it. But I feel like I'm probably in better shape now than I was, certainly near the end of my skating career.
Do you are you skating much these days?
Not so much, probably a little more now than I have been in the past couple of years. But there's a good skating scene here in Dallas, and Jason Reyna in particular will invite me to go out occasionally. And so I try to get out once in a while. Occasionally there'll be events here. We had like a Texas skating classic or something, blading classic, probably a month or two ago. And I got invited out to that. So I went out and, I even there, like I didn't show up with the intention of skating, although I had my skates in the trunk. So I knew it could happen. But people don't really let you just show up to those things. It's like no one says hello when you show up. They're all like, oh, where are your skates? So I went back to the car, got my skates, and then ended up skating and I had a great time. And Jaron was there with his son. And so I skated with them and it was fun. Every time I get out on skates, I usually have a good time. It's fun to be on skates. But when I'm not on them, I don't always miss it. It's like I have plenty that keeps my days busy. I was just having this conversation with someone. Who was it? Who was I just talking to? Dude, I don't know. This is crazy. But it was about the idea that hopefully it'll come to me. Because it's someone that's a skater, obviously. Dude, whatever. I'll see if it comes to me. But the idea that, I feel like it used to be kind of like the only way you could demonstrate your love or passion for rollerblading was to rollerblade. And people that's the only way people could judge anyone else's commitment to rollerblading. And if you weren't skating, they say, sellout, or you've given up on rollerblading, or you've turned your back, whatever. But I think there's lots of ways to be a fan of rollerblading. I love to watch rollerblading. I don't have to be out there, being the rollerblader. I love to watch videos, I like to see posts. I like to see great skating. I like to go to events and support skaters, I don't always have to be skating to show that I love skating or even to be in love with skating. I still love the sport regardless of how much I do it. All that said, I do still like to get out there and skate every once in a while. But again, another part of this conversation with this mystery person, I don't know why I can't remember, but a lot of the other things that I do enjoy in my life also. I like working out. I have a day job that, pays my salary. I like to do art. But all those things are put in jeopardy every time I skate. If I break my wrist, then all those other things I really like to do, I can't do. And as much as I like skating, it's not at the top of my list on things that I actually get, that I derive pleasure from on a daily basis. And so, so there's always that. It's like, do I want to go out and risk injury? And a lot of times the answer is no, even though it's not the conversation in my head's really not always that kind of like articulate. those are kind of the neurons that are bouncing around.
Right. I'm curious about what it. Jaron?
Sorry, you're curious about what?
Rob? I'm curious about like what that experience is like for you now. Like when you put your skates on and you do, does it feel awkward to do tricks? Do you have certain tricks that are on lock? Do you put on your skates and you're like, oh, I suck? You know,
No, actually,
is it just playful?
Yeah, there was this weird transition because now I'm 47 and no one expects me to do anything. So there's no pressure. So if I get out there, whatever I do, even if I do a soul grind, people are stoked. They go, yeah, Arlo. They think that's cool. And so that's easy. That makes skating fun. There's no pressure. I just can go out there and have fun. And I feel, my limited trick vocabulary, I'm pretty confident in most of those tricks. Even before skating, I used to ice skate for a long time. I feel comfortable skating. You know what I mean? My balance is all right. Sometimes it takes my back a little while to warm up, or, I can feel the restriction in my movements, like things that I want to do. I can't really do them just because kind of the stiffness or the pain. But that's mostly minor. But there was a transition from being a pro skater to where, my skills were declining, and everybody else was getting a lot better and I wasn't. But where people still expected or wanted me to be performing at a high level, and I knew that I wasn't. And that was hard to go out and skate under those conditions where people, I think, expect one thing and you can't deliver it. And and you're hyper aware of it. I always felt like I was disappointing people or was a letdown. That was not fun. But now that I've made it through that transition, and now people are just stoked if I'm out there at all. Now it's more fun.
Do you remember kind of making a clear decision, like, I'm not going to be a pro rollerblader anymore. I'm going to move on. I'm going to retire. Is there like a moment in time when you made that?
Kind of. I mean, I kind of just transitioned from competing to being a commentator. So my routine and my lifestyle didn't change that much. I still was going to every event. I still was traveling. I still was skating the courses. I just didn't have to compete. So no, I don't really remember having, and so I didn't have to make a choice to like walk away from it. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just sort of kept it going, just sort of transitioned into a different form. Yeah.
You were so good at announcing. Do you miss announcing, or was it fun or was it work?
Yeah, it was fun. I mean, it was fun. It was a little corny. But you know what I mean? It's because most of announcing is not for your hardcore audience. So it's kind of a way of communicating about skating or communicating skating that's got to pander or tailor itself a little bit to a wider audience.
Right.
And so it's not quite as authentic as, somebody as Daily Bread, for instance, something like that. But yeah, no, I enjoyed it a lot. I felt like I was good at it. I liked being able to kind of communicate skating to a broader audience. And I liked being able to be around skating and still sort of have a voice. And, at all those events where I was commentating, I was also sort of an unofficial moderator for the judges. I didn't actually have a vote, but I would be in on those conversations. And I enjoyed that as well. So it was a nice way to stay connected.
Yeah, you commentated for quite a while after, retiring from being a professional rollerblader. Like, when was the last time you announced a contest?
I don't know.
I feel like I saw you not too long ago, like in China or something. Maybe that was like 10-ish years ago.
Yeah, they had I think it was either Asian X Games or it was some other property.
Yeah.
But a multi-sport event in Shanghai. And yeah, I went out and I emceed for that, that was really cool.
Yeah.
So a lot of those events, what I would do was kind of interesting because I would do the live on-site call. So as they're skating, I'm announcing the event live for the live audience. And then after, I would go in the booth and do the television broadcast. So sometimes it's kind of funny because you can hear I'm announcing in the background and I'm doing the TV call. But yeah, and those are two different ways of approaching it, obviously, for the live audience and then for the TV broadcast. But
right.
Yeah, I enjoyed all that. I thought it was real fun.
So like if there was a new X Games type event in 2021 and they called you up like, Arlo, we want you to announce, is that something you would jump on? Or
well, I don't know if I would jump on it. I would definitely probably be interested. I got, this obviously has been covered multiple times. I got fired from the X Games, but that meant I lost all that work, all the different X Games properties that I was announcing.
yeah.
I also did Bitter Cold Showdown. That was a really cool one. That was the closest thing. So that was the closest thing to like blending, like sort of the daily bread ethos, but with like the responsibility of commentating, because that was commentating, but essentially for a core audience. So Matt
Right.
Mickey and I thought that was really cool. And it was produced by skaters, by Daniel. So just every aspect of it, that felt authentic. And the product on the course, that was a really cool project. It's too bad that there couldn't be more of that. We never did a second issue of Skater. You said, how come there's never a second issue of Skater? Well, I don't regret or miss that there was never a second issue of Skater. But if there could have been another thing like the Bitter Cold Showdown or something like that could have gained some traction, I think that I missed that. I think that leaves a bigger hole than not having another Skater.
Okay, listeners,
Well,
he just planted the seed. He planted the seed right there.
He did.
Make it happen.
And I want to plant another seed. Arlo, if anyone ever calls you up and they're like, yeah, we want you to announce this contest,
Yeah.
you gotta recruit a partner. I would love to announce rollerblading events. I'm a very hard worker. I'll show up on time and I'll
send me your reel.
I'll send it to you. Yeah. Just keep me in mind, okay?
Todd, I can film it. I'll film your reel, Todd. Todd, I'll film your reel.
Perfect. Thanks, Joey. We'll send that to you, Arlo. You can check it out.
Yeah. Okay, we'll put you in the
this is a silly one, but we purposely made a damaged goods style cover for Mushroom Blading 1, the DVD, because we read in an article that Michael Palak said you regretted doing the cover of Damaged Goods. Can you talk about that? Is that true? Or that's the only reason we imitated it is because we thought it was funny to keep that going in history.
Yeah, and now it's become like the basically the face of bootleg blading. You guys seen that account?
Yeah, he bootlegged the bootleg.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's great. I think that account's really fun. But it looked like he had a little like tiff with Brooke Howard Smith. But whatever. So Damaged Goods. So Damaged Goods was a T-Bone Films production. And so a lot of what happened with T-Bone was just they did whatever they wanted. That wasn't skaters, that wasn't us producing our own videos. That was T-Bone Films. And so their aesthetic and their taste and their sense of style was different than what I would have done if we were doing that stuff ourselves. And I feel like, and I've sort of commented on this before, but that, that reflects even in the tricks that they chose and the quality tricks that they chose. They were a lot less disciplined in showing like clean landings. You know what I mean? There was a lot of hands touching the ground, knees on the ground, all this stuff. So
that's so really interesting. We always loved T-Bone films
because it was
T-Bone was our shit.
Like it captured some of the how rollerblading was a kook sport to lots of people. T-Bone was the kooky company. Like they made those are some kooky videos.
Yeah, they are. And don't get me wrong, I love T-Bone also, and their place in rollerblading history is important. And I mean, the Hoax and the Hoax 2, those speak for themselves. But there definitely was sort of a disconnect between what would have been produced if it was just a skater-made product versus what it's made by filmmakers. And I'm sort of complaining about the things that I think that that we would have done better. But there's also things that they did that they brought because they were filmmakers that we wouldn't have done. The quality of filming that they used, the different angles, and even the sort of their the amount of B-roll that they got into the films, like building personality.
Yeah, personality. Yeah.
Right. That's stuff that skaters wouldn't have done, at least not initially. And T-Bone introduced a lot of that. So there's a lot of good. In fact, on balance, it's a net positive what T-Bone contributed to skating. I may quibble with some of the details, but that's just me.
It was almost advantageous that they were not skaters, and they would put things in that you wouldn't choose to put in, maybe things that made you guys look bad in certain ways. That was probably the reason why we were so gravitated towards it, because all the personality and kind of the rawness of it. So that is an interesting thought, that a lot of those kind of goofy clips wouldn't have made it in if you guys were in charge of the editing.
Exactly. So a famous thing with Evan, who was, the director, one of the filmmakers, is because they were always, looking for great B-roll. And Brian Smith was a B-roll machine, so that was no issue. He was constantly producing content.
Shout out Brian Smith, man. Oh my God. The best.
And we used to always look back and go through and see how much stuff was staged. Like even stuff that you don't think is staged initially. It's like when we're in the laundromat and Brian Smith jumps up and gets hit in the head by the ceiling fan. We started to be like, you know what? Did he plan that? Like does he look up right before he jumps up, like to see that the fan's there? And so there's all kinds of stuff like that. Like does he plan to like fall into the water right after he did that front side? Like that wasn't just an accident. This is Brian being, producing great content constantly. But so to answer your question, Joey, I know it's a long way to go, but so Evan Stone was always looking for B-roll. And so he would always point the camera at you and go, okay, be funny, do something funny, be funny now. It's like, you never know it. That's the most awkward, like unnatural thing to have to do. And so sometimes you can't do it, but we had kind of this joke go-to, and I don't remember where it originated. I think Evan was sort of like cueing us or like priming us. He's like, he'd be like, like Nebraska, boom, wow. Like he was like trying to get us like hyped up, like give me that kind of energy, And so we would just feed that back to him, but like, cartoonish. We'd be like, Nebraska, boom, wow, whatever. And it's just us sort of taking the piss. But then he would use that. Yeah. He would use that. So he had the last laugh. And I feel like the cover of Damaged Goods is basically that kind of attitude. It's like him taking something which he thinks like looks like has like energy and it's like wild and raw and like, aggro. And to me, it looks absurd and obnoxious and like, so like self-serving. And so when he put that as the cover, I was so mortified. But yeah, there you go. And then you guys just twist the knife, right? Just turning the knife. I hope you had fun.
Well, the best part is a lot of people didn't know the Damaged Goods cover. So when they saw the mushroom blading cover, they're like, oh, they're trying way too hard to be hardcore. Like,
Thank you. Right. In fact, the cover of Hoax 2 was a skeleton grinding like across America, which was
so hardcore.
Opposite. Right. It looks exactly like everything we don't want to do, but that was sort of the competing, aesthetics going on at the same time.
I find some of those things some of those kooky things again of rollerblading history turn out to be good things in 2020. Like there are some funny things like that about rollerblading history that separate us from the other sports.
Yes. And there's no question at time, looking back, it's always easy to have like kind of a different perspective on things than how it feels in the moment.
I was gonna ask, I have a whole bunch of stuff to get through, but talking about Brian Smith taking the moment to get good B-roll, when you ran up to Aaron Feinberg, was that in your head, like when he won the X Games on his 16th birthday, you were the first person to run up, hug him, you had won it the year before. Did you think in your head, this is gonna be great for TV, or did you do it because you wanted to do it?
Probably a little bit of both. There's just so few moments in my life I think of that I'm able to do without being self-conscious. I mean, everything, right, I'm so hyper aware and self-conscious about everything. So even if I wanted that to be a genuine moment, I'm sure I would have been like aware of it as I was running out there, like this is happening, right? So, I mean, it wasn't, I hate to make it sound like it was just completely cynical or calculated. I mean, obviously there was a genuine moment there, but I probably also was aware of it the moment as it was happening.
Wow. What a moment.
What a moment.
What a moment.
What a moment. They might actually start putting that back in the X Games montages because X Games actually posted rollerblading content this year. What the hell?
Yeah.
So Jesse Martinez.
Good. Yeah.
Did he threatened to kill you, or he would come to the NISS and say he was going to kill you?
Oh yeah. It happened for probably a few years, at least a couple of years in a row. But yeah, so it's interesting because when I moved to California, I moved to Venice Beach. And I would just go skate down on the boardwalk. There was like a section of the boardwalk where, people would skate. And rollerbladers were out there. It's where the roller skaters would dance, and skateboarders would also skate there. And this was before anything was built explicitly for skating. There was no skate park there. There weren't even little ledges or anything. Not built for skating. There were little ledges, but nothing was built for skating. It was just the area of the boardwalk where everyone would gravitate. And Jesse sometimes would bring out like a launch ramp, like a little kicker ramp, and we would all skate it. And if my memory is correct, but I distinctly remember sort of like having good vibes. Like I felt like he was stoked on what I was doing. And we would skate together, and he'd let me skate the ramp. Like, there were no issues. But then as skating started to build in prominence, and I guess especially once they started having a contest, like a rollerblading contest right there on his turf, exactly, because that's exactly where they set up this course, was in this little section that I described to you guys. And I guess probably once it became a thing in skateboarding to like bag on rollerbladers, like now this is kind of part of the culture. He really wasn't down with it. And I don't know the guy. From what I gather, I guess he's a little unhinged. But so, yeah, he would show up and be like screaming, like, where's fucking Arlo Eisenberg? Where's motherfucking Arlo Eisenberg? Now thinking back on it, I assume he knew I was the same guy, right, that he used to skate with on the beach. But maybe he didn't. Maybe now I just become the sort of the face of this new thing that's like, on his turf. But he's got to have known that I was the same guy. I mean, I skated in Venice every day. But so maybe I was the only name he did know. So he'd come out, where's motherfucking Arlo Eisenberg? He'd be like, I'm going to kill motherfucking Arlo Eisenberg. Everybody come up to me and they'd be like, Arlo, you got to go. You need to leave. I'm like, what am I going to do? If he's going to kill me, he's going to kill me. I'm going to hide from the NISS championships or whatever. And so obviously I didn't leave. And obviously I never got killed. I never even saw him. I mean, if he did show up, I never saw it. And it's not to say I wasn't, I was a little concerned, obviously. I don't know what's going to happen. There was a time when Brooke and Mike and I were skating down on the boardwalk. We were down the beach, and these like 3 surfers came up from the beach, and they were coming up onto the boardwalk. And they were in their, what do you call the things that surfers wear, those suits? They were in their wetsuits, had their surfboards. And these are like teenagers, and one of them is probably even like less than that. One of them seems like he's like 12 or 13 years old, sort of this like small kid. And they come up to us, and we're all sitting there on our skates, and like, you guys need to get out of here. You guys need to fuck off or whatever. And we're like, who are you? And he's like, my uncle's Jesse Martinez, and he's gonna come back here and he's gonna stab you or something. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then he goes up to Brooke, and he's like, fuck, I don't even know how it happened. But somehow this little 13-year-old swings and clocks Brooke like in the jaw, like just hits him. And then like turns to us, and he's like, you guys either or something. And then they took off. I mean, that's it. I wish I could remember the story better, but it sort of gives you the idea. It was just sort of this bizarre, like, animus between the locals and the surfers and the skaters and the rollerbladers. And there's always this sort of this like Jesse Martinez thread running through the whole thing. Like, and Jesse and Jesse's like the head of this like skateboard gang, whatever. And they're going to kill or stab rollerbladers. It was just bizarre time. Whenever I think in my head, like this movie from the 90s, like that is one of the vignettes, one of the scenes that's going to be in it. And this character based on Jesse Martinez, right, will have some role to play.
And it's amazing how that culture spread. Like even in our small town in Canada, there were equivalents of like altercations with skateboarders that wanted to like beat us up and threaten us for being at the park. Like this was happening globally.
Yeah.
It's really weird. It's very different than the climate now.
Yeah.
I feel like
totally.
that was, you know, the early, I don't know, it was the teenage years of action sports where there was this stupid animosity. And I feel like that's slowly going away. You know, I think you talked about how ridiculous it would be for a soccer player to be really mad at a baseball player, like fucking basketball player.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that, like, I think for the most part, these sports have matured. However, with scooters now, skateboarders have a new target, you know?
Yeah, but that even is a little more, I think, yeah. I think with scooters, it's less about like shitting on, you know, another sport that they think is not worthy, or like without having, I think it's less about sort of like, it's less about like explicitly like shitting on their trick vocabulary, saying like that's a lame thing, and more about there are so many people riding scooters and so many young kids riding scooters at every park that they are literally like a scourge. Like they are literally getting in the way of, you know, what the skateboarders are trying to do.
Yeah, and it's really hurting their numbers as well, because so many little kids are riding scooters. It's funny, even in Kamloops, there's like skateboarder dads that won't let their kids ride scooters.
Yeah. Well, and I think that there's, you know, an element to that. You know, you mentioned the quote about soccer players, you know, hating on baseball players or whatever. But there is kind of a different quality to action sports where there is the lifestyle element is as important as the athleticism or the trick vocabulary. And so there is something to be said. I don't know if I'm necessarily endorsing what happened or the way that it happens, but there is something to be said about defending your turf or being, you know, taking pride in kind of your set. Yeah, I don't know. That's just sort of the germ of an idea. I don't know how I really feel about it, but there is something qualitatively different about being in an action sport versus being in a conventional mainstream team sport.
How do you feel about in action sports now? The X Games had the Shred Hate campaign, and then there's Nike, like, which this is all really good stuff, like the queer skate spaces, and then there's love letters with Jeff Grosso to LGBTQ, and all of a sudden it's like they're just sweeping a little bit of their history under the rug, like, hey everybody, look, we're super inclusive and diverse now. Come on, we don't have any weird history of hate at all. Have you followed any of that? That there's like
no,
this new,
I'm not aware of that.
It was it was a big thing that Vans and Nike, and especially going closer to the Olympics, that a lot of that stuff that's popular in the world, that big companies try and promote diversity, inclusion, that it's really weird seeing it mix in with
it's like
sports.
It's like a new thing, like with like a lot of companies use it as marketing, like virtue signaling as marketing, like look at how inclusive we are. Yeah,
Great.
it's interesting
for them.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do? You know, there's a limit to how much I will punish someone for past transgressions. I mean, if they want to change their messaging and make it more positive, then good for them. They did some shitty stuff in the past, but you know, we've all done shitty stuff in the past. We shouldn't all be judged constantly by the worst things we ever did. If they are trying to do better, then great. Even if it's, you know, if it's, you know, if there's sort of a hint of marketing spin to it, or there's something, you know, even if they're, you know what, whatever. I'm not even going to try and question their motives. If they're trying to do positive messaging, good for them.
That you saw the diversity within rollerblading and accessibility as an advantage from the very beginning, didn't you? That was something.
Absolutely. In fact, I thought it was one of the things that distinguished us from skateboarding and any other sport. To this day, I think it's such an incredible like feather in the cap of rollerblading that from its very inception, we had women, we had an international community. I mean, we had people from all over the world. I mean, it was just so inclusive from the very beginning. And to this day, you can see how those, you know, those seeds from the infancy, how they blossomed into like a really like broad, diverse, inclusive sport. I think that's great.
Happy Black Jesus, Arlo.
Thank you. Happy Black Jesus to you.
What was the inspiration behind Happy Black Jesus? And that was at the very end of your time at Senate, wasn't it?
No, I don't know if it's my very end of my time, but it was definitely my time at Senate. I mean, there are themes, recurring themes, like kind of in my art, and you know, the line between art and rollerblading and my persona in rollerblading, all those things, they're all blurred. I mean, it's all one thing. I've said many times, I use Senate and I use rollerblading kind of like as a vehicle and a forum for my self-expression, for kind of my artistic vision, if I can call it that. But so religion, you know, was something that featured prominently, kind of, especially early on. You know, I had the devil horn haircut. I had the halo haircut. I did a lot of satanic reference stuff in my work. But I also did a lot of like Jesus and sort of messianic reference stuff. And, you know, I find it all equally absurd. I mean, I've never been a big, I don't believe in religion, right? So Christianity and all sides of it, the kind of the good and the bad, became a target for a lot of my ideas. And Happy Black Jesus, I think, was some kind of a weird expression of that also. But I don't remember exactly where it came from or why it came. I don't know why I think, I don't know. I guess I thought that there's something funny. There's something funny about being provocative and racist also, I guess. There's something like mildly racist about that. But not racist is not exactly right. It's playing on people's, it's sort of trying to touch the third rails, right? The things that you know get people agitated. So if you acknowledge race, if you sort of denigrate religion, I mean, all these things, I'm just pushing buttons, right? It's basically being a glorified teenager just trying to get a reaction from their parents. And so that's what I was doing on a large scale.
It's kind of a commentary on culture.
Exactly, right. It's
probing ideas. You said you don't believe in religion. Do you believe in God?
That's a weird thing to say. I don't believe in, obviously I believe in, I know that religion exists. I don't believe in God. I don't believe in gods. Okay, good show. Nice.
No. How are you supposed to follow that up? I had something related to that. Oh, I was going to ask, in your work life, do you find that wanting to be provocative or pushing buttons, do you find that creeping in once in a while for certain ideas, or do you just keep that completely separate to your art life?
Wait, what do you mean?
Wait,
first, hold on. Let me finish the thought here real quick. So first of all, gods may exist. They may or may not exist. I actually don't have a strong opinion about it. It's not important to me. It's not like an important part of my identity that I'm an atheist. It's not important to me that gods don't exist. I am a skeptic. I've discovered as a movement a thing called scientific skepticism. And it's basically the application of scientific principles to all areas of inquiry. So it's sort of like using the scientific method, providing evidence for claims. And so far as I've seen, there's no good evidence for believing in gods. That's not to say there's not lots of good reasons. I think lots of people have lots of good reasons for whatever their personal convictions are and the things that they believe. For me personally, I don't have those good reasons, and in the absence of any evidence, I just don't believe in God. It's not to say that there won't be great evidence one day that will change my mind, or that I won't find a good reason. And it's also not to say that there aren't good reasons to believe. I don't begrudge anyone else their beliefs. I happen to not believe in God or gods.
Do you ever think about what happens when you die?
Sure, but from my perspective, taking an evidence-based and sort of naturalistic view of the world, I don't think that anything happens when you die. I just think that you die. And believe me, for as sort of nonchalant or as sort of casually as I'm addressing this topic, when my stepmother basically passed away, my daughter was probably about 5 at the time. And when she asked me, "Where's Marie?" And when she said, and she asked me, I said, "Well, she's dead. You know, she's gone. She's not with us." And she said, "Well, so is she like sleeping?" I'm like, "No, she's not really sleeping." And she's like, "Well, is she ever going to wake up?" And so I had to have this conversation with my daughter. And
Right.
so for as casual as it sounds now, having it with my daughter and sort of now robbing her of this, you know, something that might comfort her or make her deal with this easier. And her 5-year-old brain definitely is not understanding any of these big concepts. I can say, "Oh, well, you know, there's evidence and, you know, it's a naturalistic world, you know, all this stuff." She just wants to know. And then she said, "Well, are you going to die? Is mommy going to die? Am I going to die?" And it's like, oh my God, I don't want my daughter to be worried about her dying, her parents dying. But at the same time, it's like, this was a chance to like put my money where my mouth is. Do I believe in the bullshit that I spew? Or, you know, am I going to kind of like just cave in and give her comfort? And I stuck to it. I told her what I thought was the hard truth. But, you know, I tried to balance. I said, "But listen, you know, your mom, your dad, none of us are going to die for a long time. You're going to live a long, happy life. And the way that, you know, we remember Marie, the way we honor each other is how we remember and think about her, and the things that she gave to us, you know, and all these things." So I gave this big thing, but she still cried herself to sleep that night. And then later, when she went back home with her mom, she called me and she said, "You know, I asked Mom what happens when we die. And she said that we go to heaven and we're going to see Marie again. We're going to see her be together again." I said, "Oh," and she said, and my daughter said, "You know," and I like what Mom said better. I said, "Babe," I said, "I like what your mom said better too." Good. So, but fast forward, so that was comforting for the daughter, for the 5-year-old. But fast forward 13 years, my daughter is in her 2nd year of college. She's studying neuroscience. She does not believe in God. And I'm not saying like this is a good thing, but I'm telling you, she worked these things out on her own because she had her mom's influence. She had my influence. But really, to me, it's not important what she believes. What's important is that I gave her the tools to work through these things on her own and sort of have reasoned opinions. And so, yeah, so I'm proud of the work that she's done. And I'm proud of the tools that her mom and I gave her to sort of have the freedom to make those choices.
I think that's really healthy for kids, is to have parents that kind of offer different ideas or different beliefs. And so it plants in the child's head like, oh, this isn't like a set in stone thing. Like, people believe different things. And so I'm free to believe what I want to believe. I think that's really healthy, and it promotes kind of thinking for yourself, because both parents aren't saying, "Oh, it's like this. It's open and closed. You go to heaven or you don't go to heaven." So yeah, that sounds like a good balanced perspective.
Yeah,
for sure.
But Joey, there was somewhere you were going after that I hijacked with that God conversation. Oh, it was something about art, like something expressing something in art. What were you saying?
Just in your work day, the work that you do you find the Arlo that worked at Senate or the rollerblader Arlo creeping in, or do you keep that side completely separate? The one who wants to push the envelope or try provocative things?
No, so it is part of what I do. Obviously, the clients that we have for work, it's not most of my most radical ideas are not appropriate. But the idea of sort of trying to think outside the box or try to present something different, you know, when we present a lot of concepts to our clients, and a lot of times mine is their second favorite. So what they pick is the concept that is safe and that, you know, solves the problem, but they really love what I showed. It's a little too far for what they feel comfortable with. But I think that there's value in presenting that to clients because they appreciate the thinking that we put in to, you know, their problems. So it's sort of a version of what I do with everything else. But for what is the, you know, a pure expression of my art, what I like to do, I just sort of have to create the space for that. That's why I do drug receipts and things like that, where I can just kind of have the freedom to do whatever I want. And again, drugs are just like religion. It's another thing that I can use that I know that kind of pushes people's buttons. It's the things that I kind of have articulated this before in conversations with friends, but for me, the things that I gravitate toward most are the things which I think people find most uncontroversially objectionable. So like Satan is something that most people would find uncontroversially objectionable. Same thing with drugs. It's like, and same thing with like war, like all these things that it's pretty easy for us to all agree they're bad things, right? There's nothing controversial about saying that drugs are bad or whatever. But so I like to, it's kind of like you said, Todd, I like to like sort of turn it on its head. It's a commentary on culture. It's a way of forcing people to kind of think outside of their comfort zone and sort of think about these things that we always take for granted and think about really what is motivating kind of our thoughts about these things. So yeah, so in that way, I like to be provocative, and I kind of, those kinds of messages, those kinds of themes help me to be provocative.
I wish people would make the second choice more. I find people always go for the safe one. And when they do choose the weird idea, it's beneficial a lot of it. Sometimes it falls flat, but why do people go for the safe idea?
Yeah. Well,
their livelihoods are on the line. It's a lot of balls to take a risk.
What happens with us, or what I find, is sometimes when you introduce the out of the box idea, even if they don't choose it, then you have pushed the envelope a little bit. So the next go round, they're a little more receptive to things that push the envelope a little bit more. So it's a slow process, but there is definitely value in it. It is, you take steps.
Right.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
You're opening up people up with with provocative ideas.
Exactly.
You're a great writer, Arlo, and you had a lot of amazing stuff on Digital Messiah. Are you still the Digital Messiah, or you're not? What was the idea behind Digital Messiah?
That's a great question. That was, that's funny. I have not thought about that in a long time, but that was a real, probably a labor of love. The idea is real similar to the story I told you about Skater Magazine and where that came from. Just sort of like craving a space where I could like kind of get ideas out there, unedited, unadulterated. And so for me, Digital Messiah was that even more. It was like everything. Like it was a repository where I could put writing, I could put art. It could just be a complete kind of like brain dump, mind dump. And so I kind of got it out there. You're right. It had a lot of writing on it. I forgot about all that writing. I don't even know where all that stuff exists now. Writing's another thing that I love, It's funny. I just, Tyler Shields, who we know, who's now has had wild success as a fine art photographer, and he's still, he's a good friend. And he just like updated his website, and he had, on his bio, he had kind of this article that had been written by someone, probably a writer for some magazine or something. But he asked me he said he wanted me to redo the bio for his website. And so I did it. And I'm so busy that it's hard for me to take on side work, especially something that I really want to put some time into. And so after months of not doing the bio, after accepting the offer and telling him I would do it, I called him. I said, listen, Tyler, I'm never going to do this. I said, the only hope we have of getting this done is I'm going to fly out to California. I'll stay with you for a few days and I'll write it while I'm there. That way I won't have any other distractions. I won't be tempted to do work. I'll just be there to write your bio and we'll get it done. And so he said, great, let's do it. And so I went out there, I stayed with him for a week, wrote it. But I didn't finish it. I got to like the last paragraph. And because writing it was the biggest thing. Like I interviewed him, like we would talk, and like I wrote I did like 2 false starts, like where I basically wrote 2 articles, but they ended up not being the exact right direction. And then finally I landed on kind of the right theme, the right kind of convention to package this whole thing in, and wrote it, got it going, and just didn't quite get to the finish line. And so sure enough, I got home, and then another few months go by where I can't get back into it to finish it. the exact thing that I was trying to avoid. And so like a week ago, he sent me a link to the new website had launched. And I didn't open it. I couldn't click on it. Like I was so full of shame, like that I never finished his bio for him. And so I didn't acknowledge it. I didn't say thanks. I didn't open the link. It's like, it's the ostrich, right? I just put my head in the sand. I can't bear the shame of this. But Christmas came. It's a Christmas miracle. A week off of work where I can focus on my own projects. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to put on pants. I don't have to leave the house. I don't have to do my work. I can, and top of my list of things to do was to finish this thing for Tyler. And so I did. And then I was so happy. I finished it. I'm like, Tyler, I finished it probably like at midnight here, but it was 10 in LA. And I'm like, are you awake? He said, yeah. And I said, can I read you something? And so I got him on the phone, read it, whole thing finished. And he loved it. He said, I love it. And he said, you know, he said, a lot of things have been written about me and a lot of them have the same content. He said, but when I read it from other people, I don't believe it. It does, like even the things I hear about myself, it doesn't sound true. It sounds kind of like a put on. He said, but from you, it sounds credible. It sounds believable because like I'm a witness to a lot of it. It's not just me talking about this guy. It's like, I saw it happen. And in fact, that was the perspective I ended up taking for the article. I didn't just write it as like an unnamed third person. I started by saying, before Tyler was Tyler, before he was this world famous photographer, I knew him as a skater, a 12-year-old skater from Jacksonville, Florida. And so then we got to tell a story about him coming up, but from this authentic perspective as a witness to the whole thing. It's cool. It came out great. But so I really loved that process, Joey, of writing, of being able to create this thing for Tyler and then being able to get the response that he loved it and they appreciate it. And now it'll be out there for other people to enjoy. So yeah, that writing is another forum for expression that I really am attracted to.
You're very well-spoken and articulate. Do you think your writing has helped your speaking and your kind of generation of ideas verbally?
Probably. Honestly, what helps anything is doing that thing. So what helps speaking is speaking. So I've had a lot of opportunity, right, with the commentary, with the I would present at the ASA awards banquets. Actually, I don't know how true that is, but I tried it. I use it. I speak a lot. I've had a lot of opportunity to do kind of public speaking or speak in a public forum. Reading helps a lot. Reading helps your writing and your speaking, I guess. Just the broader your vocabulary and the more access you have to the way ideas are expressed, you've seen other people express them, you have some experience, some practice expressing them yourself, the easier it is to sort of navigate through communication, whether it's writing or speaking. And that's true for anything. I mean, you get better at skating by skating, but also at looking at other people skating and thinking about skating. And it's true for anything. You've got to do it, but you've also got to expose yourself to other influences.
Yes. Kind of off base, but I just need to ask, do you ever think about or fantasize about making a skate section?
Kind of. I mean, I got to make one for when I got last place in the Blading Football League, which was not a fantasy of mine. I had to do it. I put it off for a couple of years, but your penalties keep compounding. You have to pay a cash penalty for not, producing the section. And so that was getting kind of oppressive, the amount of money I was having to pay to stay in the league. So I did it. And it was brutal, honestly, mostly because the skates didn't fit me very well. And so my feet got tore up and it hurt to skate. But I'm proud of it. I thought it looked good. It was fun. It was fun to skate on that level again. And every time I skate, I say that I don't do it often. It's so funny, but if you skate once, Jason Reyna invited me to go skate in someone's backyard mini ramp. And so I went out, this was maybe a month ago, and I went out and I skated and had a great time. And then after you skate once, of course you come home and all you can think about is skating. I'm thinking about all the tricks I want to try next time I go out. I'm thinking, oh, I could do this. And your mind just gets in that mode. And then I don't skate that often, so it starts to wear off. But it only takes one session. If I go out and I skate one day, instantly I think I'm a skater again, and I start thinking about all the tricks I'm going to do. I start thinking about, I could go out and I could go like find a couple of spots, and I could start building up some clips, And so yeah, I do. Once the seed is planted, or once the gears start turning, yeah, I start thinking in that mode. But then if I let it, languish for long enough, it starts turning off again.
Man, that would be so sick to see like a full kind of section, that you filmed over an extended period of time, kind of worked yourself into like a semi-prime mode physically and everything. Like your 50th is coming up. Maybe like people would just be so stoked,
Yeah. Yeah, who knows? Like I said, every once in a while the fire does get kindled a little bit. So maybe it'll turn into something, especially if, unfortunately for you, I'm such a good fantasy football manager that the chances of me ever getting last place again are very slim. Especially,
I think that would be the difference. I think that would be the difference. If this was something that you intrinsically wanted to do just for the sake of doing it, I think it would turn out like a lot better than if you lost a bet and had to create it.
I don't know. I mean, because it's like I said, once you start doing it, you do it. I mean, whatever the initial impetus was, once I started filling that section, I was like, I'm thinking of spots. I'm thinking of tricks that I want to have. It's like I'm thinking of building a section. The main difference, honestly, would be because I have new skates now that fit me a lot better. If I wasn't in so much pain in that last section, it would have been a much more enjoyable experience, and I would have been able to get even more content. So I kind of would be happy to do it again, probably, honestly.
Fuck yeah.
Something that's interesting about your history is that you had two parts that I know of. So there's Night of the String, Day of the Rope, were your street parts, maybe some park in there. Mad Beef, you can kind of count, you have a part. You didn't have a lot of parts, did you?
That Fast Shoes Brazil was pretty much all Arlo.
I would count that one as a part.
That was sick. But man. Oh my God. I watched that last night.
I think they're so absurd.
No, man, it was so sick. In spin, you did fakie to a topside wheelbarrow.
No, boardwalk or sidewalk.
Boardwalk. Yeah. What did I say? Wheelbarrow. Yeah, sorry, boardwalk. And when you come off of it, your little gesture to the camera, like
I'm so stoked. That. I just did the lamest trick in the history of rollerblading. I'm so proud of myself,
dude.
Like I'm going to show them. Like Arlo can be new school. Fucking that did not age well.
So sick, man. So sick.
That should be the cover of y'all's next video.
It should. That's a great idea.
The pump. But how do you go ahead?
So the early videos weren't really structured like that. They were all kind of just montages, the hoax and things like that. And same with Hoax 2. That was a travel video, so that wasn't really about breaking it down into skater sections. I never really had. And then, I had Senate. I was doing so many things behind the scenes. I wasn't really sort of a pro skater getting sections. I was doing other stuff, and then if I ended up in videos, it'd be a trick or two. But I've covered this in depth, kind of like. I think it was with Justin, maybe I had kind of like this cathartic therapy session where I kind of like bore my soul about like Hoax 2 and how bad I felt about the quality of my skating. But so Mad Beef would have been around kind of like my prime, if I was going to have had a section, it would have been around there where it probably would have been at its best. And, also now, like, I feel if I skated more regularly, I feel a lot more comfortable kind of with my trick vocabulary and my ability to pull off tricks and sort of the style of my skating. I feel like I went through a period where I was really uncomfortable skating. Like I wasn't confident in the stuff I was doing. I didn't feel like it was good enough. And so I didn't want to try the tricks I didn't know how to do because I didn't want to look bad. And I didn't want to just keep doing the tricks I did know how to do because I feel like they weren't adequate. But now I feel like I'm in a much more comfortable spot where I could put together a section that's kind of appropriate for my skill set, that would look confident and, you know, stylish and all that stuff.
Right. It doesn't need to be innovative, or you don't need to really like learn new tricks. You could just
Exactly,
do
yeah.
kind of the signature Arlo moves and it would be satisfying.
Yeah,
And
and I
people
might
would
be able
love
to,
it.
yeah, and I could, you know, I could push myself within my limits
Yeah.
in a way to be appropriate. But yeah, yeah, totally.
Yeah, I thought not your perspective on that, but there was a lot of people in that era that had that perspective. And I remember as a younger person watching that, you could tell like Brian Smith was trying to keep up with the young kids. And it affected skating in a negative way, I think, that instead of just going your own paths and doing and saying like, this is what we think of skating now, I guess the level of skating was so high that people felt like they needed to keep up. But we lost a lot of really good people in that era because of that. So
yeah,
I don't think that's going to happen again.
No, but there's something else kind of interesting about that. This is sort of a slightly different topic, but it's related specifically to Brian Smith and what you just said about trying to keep up. But you know, this was a quality that I thought was brilliant in Brian that I lacked, but made the difference between being able to keep up and not. But he wasn't afraid to go out there and look ridiculous. He wasn't afraid to go and throw himself at a rail and miss, you know, and miss a lot and miss sort of like spectacularly. I didn't want to look bad. And so I wouldn't take those chances. And so I didn't progress. And Brian, sometimes he would look ridiculous, but he got really, really good. And so it's like, you've got to be able to, you can't be afraid of, you know, looking bad. You got to put yourself out there sometimes.
In order to grow, you have to be willing to fail.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, the generational difference. I mean, nowadays it seems like older dudes aren't quitting. There isn't like a quit button. Whereas, you know, in your generation, it was very common. Dudes hit 25, 28, and it was just, oh, I'm done. And you just didn't see them anymore. Why do you think that is?
I think a lot of it is kind of exactly what we've just talked about. There was such a big explosion in trick vocabulary, a big difference in kind of the quality of skating, that there was a real marked difference between kind of generations of skaters. People from my generation, it was clear that we were not as good as the next generations coming up. And so it was time to hang them up. The guys that are old now, are getting old now, it's not going to get much better than that. There might be young kids that are willing to take more risk, or maybe the older guys are not as willing to do their hardest stuff, but their trick vocabulary kind of is so well established and kind of like credible on its own that there's no shame in like slowing it down a little bit. There's nothing embarrassing about hanging around. It's like when they go to any spot, or if they go skate with anyone, they're not gonna look out of place.
Right.
And you can do that. You know, there's a measure. You can go look back at skating videos. Like there's a point where sections start to become timeless. Like no matter what era you look at them, they're always impressive. But there's also a cutoff point where before that, it's not true. Like you can look at, you know, some of our sections from much earlier, and they're not timeless. They are very dated. The trick vocabularies aren't that hard. The style's not that good. So once you get to kind of that timeless tier, there's no reason you can't stay in there forever.
Right.
An Alex Broskow section is never going to look bad, right?
Right.
No matter how far back you go into his catalog, they're all impressive. So he can keep skating forever, even if he's not always doing his hardest, most dangerous stuff. His skating's never going to age.
That's a crazy thought. It's going to be very interesting to see a 65-year-old Alex Broskow.
Well, and Josh Petty said, you know, he had a good point, but he's like, you know, if you have, and this is kind of tangentially related to this conversation, but if you have good style, then that in itself is timeless. And you can go out to a skate park and you can do a soul grind or royale forever. And even if that's all you ever do, it's always going to look good. So,
And that's the thing about, like, that's why it would be so exciting to see a new Arlo section, is because you do have such a distinct style. Like nobody else can look like you on skates. You know, you've developed that signature over so many years and your certain body type that it's so unique. And that's why people would love to see it. It's not really like the how difficult the tricks are or how dangerous. It's just seeing this signature style come to life again would be exciting.
Well, I'll put some new wheels on my skate and we'll go out and just see what happens.
That's very exciting.
It is exciting. It's so much more fun to skate when the wheels are new or when the skates are fast.
Man, yeah, when you have a good setup, comfortable, responsive, you know, fast, it makes all the difference. Skating is a lot more fun.
Yeah.
With a
No
good
doubt.
setup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a couple more things if you want to keep going, Arlo. How are you feeling?
Sure. I'm feeling
good?
great. I'm feeling good.
There's an article that I can't find where it was really funny. You did yoga, and it was how you were skeptic towards yoga. Do you remember that article?
No, what the heck?
I think,
I mean, now you're saying something's starting to percolate, but give me more. What are you talking about?
was it was like your ex-wife taught yoga or something?
Yeah.
And you took her
Okay.
class, and it was really funny, like your perspective on the whole experience. I wish I've been
Was this
wanting
for
to
David
read.
Brett?
No, it was like for your blog. I think in the Franco Shade era, you had a blog with some really good stuff that's now, but that one was particularly funny, but I can't remember too much because I can't find it. But have you done yoga since, and what are your thoughts on yoga from your skeptic mind?
Well, let me finish this Franco Shade thought real quick, because I lost a lot of great content because I was writing basically like a daily blog for Franco Shade, and some of those stories were really great. And that with the website lapsed, so it's all gone. But I do go back occasionally into the Wayback Machine, which archives all the the website content, and sometimes I'll be able to find articles on there. So I might have to look that up. That's funny. But so what? Yeah, have I done yoga since? Yeah, I've done it a couple of times. I don't remember what I said in that article, so I don't know how to compare it to whatever my opinion was then. But yeah, like I said that when I go skate, my back sometimes, my body's tight, my back hurts sometimes, my knees aren't always great. So anything that promotes and facilitates movement and flexibility, I think is there's something to be said for it. I've already made my feelings about religion clear, so anything that veers too far into territory that's not backed up by data or good evidence, so I start to get a little uncomfortable with. And I think a lot of that happens in yoga. But I think without that, there's a lot of solid principles that have a lot of merit and credibility.
One thing I do remember is that you did feel relaxed at the end, and I think you enjoyed. They maybe hit a gong or something, and I think you enjoyed the gong sound. And then I think you referenced Oprah in the article.
Really?
Yeah,
that's funny.
It was Oprah's the beginning of her kind of new age bent, which she doesn't do as much anymore. But
I definitely have an article on skeptic tattoos where I mentioned Oprah and Dr. Oz as kind of like purveyors of bad ideas and kind of new age hokum to kind of an affluent middle class audience.
Yeah, I remember that one. So as somebody who's skeptic about lots of things, do you take any supplements or vitamins or anything like that? Because I know there's a lot of bold claims in that industry, but do you take anything that helps your body and mind, vitamin wise, supplement wise?
No, I take vitamin D because my doctor said I needed it. When I get my physical, he said I'm deficient in that. But even when he told me to take it, I didn't take it for a year until I went back for my second physical. And he's like, have you been taking the vitamin D? It's like still deficient. I'm like, oh no, I never got it. But because I know that there's not a whole lot of good data for vitamins. They're typically a pretty poor conveyor of the nutrients into your system. You're better off getting it through food, right? Or the whatever. But so it does turn out that there are some vitamins that actually are beneficial and do work. So, and vitamin D does work, so I take it.
Along those same lines, you mentioned that you work out. Are there any other things you do for recovery, or like breath work or cold exposure, or any tips? Because you're doing very well. You're looking very good.
Thanks.
What's your secret? Do you have any? What are your secrets?
But I do. I mean, I'm older, so it's essential. I stretch before every workout, and I stretch after. And so, Joey, I do also, to sort of follow your last point, I incorporate some yoga movements into my stretching routine. So yeah, I do it regularly, like every day, probably. And building the stretching in before every workout, to me, feels great, because I know every day I'm at least getting a little bit of stretching, a little bit of movement, stretching out my hamstrings, stretching out my back. So I think that that's an important part of my routine. Yeah. And,
so is there anything else that you
weights. What's that?
You lift weights. Is there anything else that you incorporate into your routine?
No, I try not to eat like an asshole all the time, but
yeah,
no, there's nothing else really.
You had a really old quote in A Daily Bread that was always very funny to us, that you said, "I definitely have been a lot happier since I started drinking." Do you still get that feeling after you have a drink or two?
Yes. And not only that, I've definitely been a lot happier since I've discovered hallucinogenics. So I didn't drink in high school, or do drugs or anything. I wasn't straight edge. I just chose not to do them. I started drinking more in college, and I would drink when we would go on tour, but I didn't drink often, and I never did drugs. But I would drink sometimes, and it was fun. And I would get really drunk sometimes, and that was fun. And I've told the story of the first time I ever did drugs with Josh Petty and Joe Nabro.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah. And I was probably, I feel like I want to say 27, around 27. I'm not sure if that's right. It feels probably about right. But I'd never smoked pot, and I have now. I've smoked pot maybe probably more than a couple of times, whatever. I've done edibles. But, so I was into my 30s before I started trying drugs. It's probably in my 40s before I tried any hallucinogens or hallucinogenics. No, that's not true. I did acid with Roadhouse. And I was probably in my 30s. I don't know, whatever. But dude, like, the experiences were incredible. So I'm looking for novel experiences. I crave novel experiences, right? And the more novel, the better, the more interesting. And acid provided that. It provided a really novel experience, right? It changes. It gives you new insights, kind of into how your mind creates reality. Provides or creates your reality. And so that was all real interesting. But bear in mind that I also have kind of this skeptic background. So I'm not assigning like more spiritual meaning to this. I don't really look at it as divining insights into the universe, or something like that. But I absolutely feel like it's giving insight kind of into the structure of the brain and the phenomenon and the processes happening in the mind. And that's all really cool to see. And also it's kind of, it's kind of like a roller coaster for your brain. It's kind of fun. Same thing with mushrooms. I had a really novel experience on mushrooms, but because I didn't do these things till much later in life, I feel like there is a danger, if you do them too young, to mistake these experiences, these profound, novel, really fun experiences, to mistake them for something more important than they are, or to mistake them for the most important experiences you'll have in your life. By the time I tried them, I'd had so many great experiences skating with friends, traveling. I had a daughter. I'd been married. I'd had really great romantic relationships. So drugs became another really fun, interesting experience, but I didn't mistake it for the most important experience I would ever have. So I had the opportunity to go out and have all these really great experiences. And then drugs it was possible for them to just be another one. But so I think if you have them too early, people then chase them. It becomes a thing that they have to keep having because that is a great experience. And it's a real cheap, easy way to have a great experience. But now I don't have that temptation. It's okay to have it, occasionally, once a year.
So true. Oh, I definitely agree. Like the later you can wait to have those experiences, the more realistic your view on them is going to be. You're ready for it. We've heard a lot of stories about cocaine use in rollerblading. Was there a lot of cocaine use going on in the heyday?
Not that I was aware of. No, not that I was aware of. In fact, my generation, the group that I was in, there was just not a whole lot of drug use at all, honestly. Yeah. I mean, we would drink sometimes. We would party and drink, but there was not a whole lot of drug use. That came in later generations, honestly.
Were there any rollerbladers that you skated with that would like skate under the influence of any drugs or that you knew of?
No. I mean, if it happened, it was not a thing. I might have been, I'm sure I saw skaters skate drunk before, and I definitely saw skaters skate high before. But no, there's nothing I think really significant about it that I could point to.
Yeah.
On one of the podcasts, you talked about one of the things you do regret was your appearance of the longer beard and the longer hair. Do you remember that? You said
it was getting the horn shaved in my head when I had long hair. Yeah.
No, it was that you were talking about if you Google you, there's one specific picture that you really don't like.
Yeah. That's another one.
So I want to apologize that I uploaded the Black Market, the ESPN story, the rant. I know that is kind of the look that you have, and that a lot of people are watching that. So do you regret your look in that video, or do you regret anything in that video? How do you feel about that rant? Because I think it's still incredible.
Wait, what are you talking about? What black? Oh, yeah. That's oh yeah, no, I don't listen. I don't mind. Yeah, I think that phase is kind of, I don't know. It's not the best look, but no, I don't mind. I don't mind watching Black Market. That photo, just somehow that photo captures that look at its worst. It looks terrible. It's probably a bad angle of me. It's not. That period may have been, whatever, but that photo is much worse than the period. That photo is that period at its worst. So no, I don't mind watching Black Market. There's a lot of footage from that era. I don't mind it as much, but that photo is just god awful.
I think were you rocking the sleeveless tee and the long sleeve in that era?
Yeah.
Have you
rocked? Yeah.
Have you rocked that one recently? The sleeveless T-shirt with the long sleeve?
No, a lot of what happened there, and so this is kind of an interesting concept here, but you guys have each or both complimented me, like on my writing. You've complimented me on my speaking. We've talked about art, and so all these things are nice. I appreciate that feedback, and I do feel like I'm reasonably good at those things. But I'm always so kind of like annoyed with myself because it's hard for me to
Did he freeze up? How appropriate.
Right. And so I'm
sorry, you froze for a little bit.
Oh, are you with me? So it's hard. Did I say it's hard for me to kind of do the easy, expected, normal thing? Like, I wish my memory was better because I just had like the vivid experience of this like yesterday. Like I sent someone a text, someone had texted me and I texted them back, and like I couldn't resist like saying something kind of clever, I don't know, but in the text. And the second I sent it, I was like, Arlo, why didn't you just respond like a normal person? like you're such an idiot. You don't always have to be clever, and you know, it just makes you look like an idiot. Like you it looks like you're so full of yourself, or like you're like you can't. I don't know, whatever. And I feel like that constantly. Like even this whole conversation, like I can't help myself but always just be extra. You know, too much. And so whereas yes, I appreciate the feedback, and it's nice. I do feel like I'm reasonably good at a lot of things. At the same time, I feel like I have no governor. I can't just stop myself, and I can't just be normal sometimes. And so the reason I say all of that is sometimes it manifests itself like in these terrible ideas where it's like, you know, it's like I think I gotta have style, like I gotta have this look, you know, a cut off t-shirt, and I'm gonna wear a long sleeve camo shirt underneath, and I'm gonna wear a bandana. And it's like it's just sort of like all these ideas just like completely unfiltered, like with no restriction whatsoever. And it's just, and sometimes I end up with something cool, and I've got like, you know, and I come up with a, you know, a great t-shirt graphic, but sometimes I just look like an asshole wearing a bandana, you know, with a Steve Austin t-shirt.
That's so fun. I can relate so much to just going over the top too much, and like, you gotta just relax, Todd. Just ease up.
But you know what? It's a variation on this Brian Smith concept. It's like, if you're going to be the kind of person that's going to innovate or like push things, it means you got to put yourself out there. Sometimes you're going to fail miserably. And so it's funny because the same thing, the same principle, which we're able to apply kind of like, I'm able to apply it artistically, I was unwilling to apply it in my skating. And I think it's because I had competing ideas, because I was so protective of this idea of I wanted skating to look good and stylish that I was unwilling to ever look uncomposed or unstylish skating. And so I was afraid to look bad. And so I think that impulse, that instinct kind of trumped this other instinct, which wanted to push the envelope or to put yourself out there and take risks.
Yeah, that's really interesting that your thinking was very free and your art is very free, but your skating was actually quite conservative, that you didn't take risks. I'm trying to think, there's nothing really wacky or weird that you did in your skating at all. Maybe a grab solo here or two. I'm not sure. So, and you still don't.
I mean, the whole Brazil section was a little weird.
See, but that was a big influence on us in Kamloops, that gave us more freedom to try weird stuff. Like we're still influenced by T-Bone.
Good.
Yeah. More than VG.
Good.
What do I have some more stuff here. Was the Leaving Senate photo ad, was that your idea or did they do that?
No, in fact, I don't know if I've ever talked about this one. To me, that felt like a slap in the face. Like I was kind of offended by it. I mean, and I've made such a career out of like, you know, always being irreverent, not taking things too seriously. So I took it in stride. I had to take it in stride. But personally, inside, I was kind of hurt by it. I mean, I felt like I gave so much to that company. And it did not feel appropriate. Like I felt like they were trying to make me look stupid. And I get it. I know that I sort of get the idea. It's like, it's sort of consistent with kind of how we did everything. I think they were trying to keep kind of like the Senate, like F the world attitude, like, you know, keep it irreverent. But I did take it a little personally, honestly.
Who wrote that, or do you know who did that, or?
Well, so honestly, I don't remember it in great detail. I mean, I feel like it's a silly picture of me carrying a box like out of Senate, probably making a weird face like, and I don't know what it said. I mean, I'm guessing it would have been Mark, right? He was the only one left at Senate when I left. Kevin Gillen was there, but I don't know. And honestly, I'm telling you how I took it. I was a little hurt by it, or I took it a little personally. It probably wasn't meant in that spirit. I think like I said, I think they honestly were just trying to be funny and keep it like in the spirit of the Senate ethos. So, you know what I mean? I'm not, and I'm so cool with Mark. It didn't like create a rift or anything. It was just sort of a personal thing that hurt a little bit inside, but I got over it.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, it was confusing that did Arlo come up with the idea? That was his last idea, but it didn't seem consistent with some of your other ads and ideas. So
yeah, no, I didn't do that.
And I don't know if you've ever talked about did you have to fire people from Senate? personally?
Yes. Yes. So this is another thing that I was talking. Who is this mystery person I just had this conversation with? Dude, guys, it's killing me. So maybe CTE is a thing, because this should not be that hard to remember. We were talking about the transition phase where you go through a certain age in your life where you have to where there's tension with your friends in your peer group. This was not my idea. This was the idea of the person I was talking to. Well, but so while I continue to think about that, I keep getting closer to whatever this conversation was. Yeah, I fired all my best friends. The Senate had gotten, I think, kind of stagnant, and I feel like everyone had gotten kind of fat and complacent. All the team writers included, myself included, we all took Senate for granted. Senate made a lot of money. We were paying all of our writers great salaries, but it was seen as kind of like the I don't know, kind of like the passe, kind of like it wasn't the coolest, hottest, newest thing. And so even though we were all making good salaries from Senate, like we all had different clothing sponsors, even though Senate was a clothing sponsor, we would all support other companies. And it seemed like we all were more interested in the other things than the main thing that was providing basically our biggest salaries. And that also was happening internally. Like we all, Shane had Mind Game and our Medium, and I was doing Supercomputer Robot, and Dave Temple was doing Color Theory. It's like we all had our projects, which were even cooler and took more of our time and our creative energy than Senate did. And Senate was the thing financing all these other things. And so it was kind of languishing. And so we had kind of this like revolutionary internal directive. It's like, we're going to refocus on Senate. It's like it was Trump's MAGA. We were going to make Senate great again, Senate first. And so that meant, and so we were going to do a big shakeup, and we were going to let our team go and do a new team, have a new, create some new energy. But it meant, we were Senate. It was my company, right? It was us. Who else? There's only one way to fire the team, right? I can't have our human resources fire the team. I had to do it. And so I had to call Mike Opalik or bring them in, Eric Shrine, TJ, B-Love. And this was bad. Nobody was cool about oh yeah, we understand, it's in the best interest of Senate. It's like they were hurt. For as hurt as I said I was for a funny photo in the magazine. Here I am taking away a salary from them. I'm telling them that I'm basically saying you're not good enough to be on the team anymore, or we've decided to go in a different direction. Whatever. We don't value you enough to have you on the team. However you want to try and spin that, that's basically what we're saying to them. Mike was my roommate at the time. This was really an insane thing to do. I could try and put kind of a virtuous, noble spin on it and say, well, this is how committed I was to Senate that I was willing to take that on, but it was really, B-Love wanted to have, maybe he did have a bonfire and burn all the Senate gear. Mike Opalik was bitter for a long time. It took a long time for those wounds to heal. And they probably also harbor a little bit of resentment to this day, and rightfully so. And I'm not even sure what the net benefit was. I don't know if there was a great resurgence in the popularity or the estimation of Senate. Yeah, who knows? But it's definitely something that happened.
Yeah, that's heavy. That would have been, was that difficult for you to fire your friends?
Yeah, it was really difficult. At the time, I probably would have buttressed myself by, telling myself that this is in the best interest of the company, and, it's going to be difficult, but it's just kind of a necessary evil. You've got to do it. And honestly, I probably would have taken some pride in that. I probably would have felt like I'm, it's a sacrifice I'm making for the company. I would have found a way to feel empowered by that. But
And just to look your friend in the face, or like write him an email like, can you come to my office,
Yeah.
please?
that's
And
the
then
thing.
look at him in the face and say, we've decided to go in a different direction. You have to
Exactly.
pack up your shit. and leave."
Exactly.
That's
Right. So
that's intense.
This tool I'm using, or that I'm telling you about, to like sort of buttress myself and come up with this kind of this positive spin where I can feel good about what I'm doing, is really just a mask, right, to cover the pain and the discomfort that comes with really the terrible thing that I'm having to do. So yeah, that was a tough episode for sure.
I have to pee so bad.
Me too.
I've been holding
Me
a pee.
too. Let's do it. Pee break.
Hello?
Hello.
What? What's up?
Wow, that was pretty amazing because I had these Bluetooth headphones in, and wow, I had been holding a pee for so long, it was painful. And I went pee, and while I was peeing, I could hear both of you peeing very clearly.
No, you could.
Yes, I could, because I had my headphones still in,
But it
and
wasn't
they're
it.
Bluetooth. So I was listening to
Then
you
you-
guys have these really long pees while I was peeing. It was really a nice experience. And I started thinking about both of your penises. And Arlo, do you still have a Prince Albert in a can? Is that a thing?
Well,
still?
it's funny because I don't believe you could hear me peeing, because I still sit down to pee. I was sitting down.
Me too. I sit as
really?
well. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't want to
What?
make a mess. I sit. Yeah.
You guys both do?
Maybe I was listening to Joey. I couldn't tell exactly whose, but I could hear someone very clearly peeing, and I thought it was both of you. It sounded like two streams.
You know what? I like it better if we were all peeing in unison, and it's like there was this like chorus of piss sounds all at once.
That's what was happening on my
like
end.
intimate connection.
Yeah, it was beautiful, and they were all really long pees.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
You guys had both
We've
been
been
holding
holding it for a
them.
while.
Yeah.
They were a solid 70 seconds.
I'm just happy we were all thinking the same thing there.
Yeah.
Having to pee does inhibit thinking. There's a point where it's tolerable, and then there's a point where
It's all you think.
It has to be it.
I held it for a long time because I didn't want to break the conversation, but
Well, I can't wait to see what things we come up with now that our minds have been released.
yeah.
But so to answer your question, I don't have the Prince Albert anymore. I took it out when I got married. Because this is kind of a gross story, I think, but when you get married, you have sex a lot, right? The honeymoon phase, and there would be after we would have sex, my ex-wife would complain of like blood in the ejaculate, like when she would use the restroom afterwards, whatever. So she went to the doctor to get checked out, and the doctor's like, "No, it's not from you. There's nothing wrong with you." She said, "It's probably your husband." And she told him, she said, "Oh yeah, well, his penis is pierced." And the doctor's like, "Oh yeah, well, the ring is, when you guys are having sex, it's probably tearing inside his urethra, and that's the blood coming in his ejaculate." And I was like, that was kind of disturbing to hear. And so I went and I got it taken out, and I haven't had it since, but the hole is there forever. So that's why I still sit down to pee, because there's still a little drip that comes out of the bottom of the head of my penis.
Yeah, I just like to save the mess, so I sit. I don't like to splash all over the floor. But okay, so you actually had a hole in your urethra.
But so Todd, even if I hadn't ever had it pierced, I am so happy. I do like sitting down much better than the other way.
Yeah.
It is much easier, much less mess.
Me too.
If I wake up with a boner or something, I don't have to like try and like get all contorted to pee.
Yeah, and plus sometimes you don't even realize that you had to poo, but you sit down and you start peeing, and you realize, oh, I can poo right now, and you wouldn't have otherwise pooed if you were standing.
That actually was something I think that took some adjustment, because sitting down made me think that I had to poo. So I would always like my bowels would like start. It's like, oh, we're sitting down. Here we go. We're in act.
It's a cue.
We're up to bat. And so I had to learn to not take a shit every time I sat down. But yeah, now sometimes, especially if you take your phone and you'll just be sitting there for a while, it's like, you know what? I'm here. I'm feeling a little bit of activity. Maybe I'll just like push something out.
It's a nice surprise.
Yeah, but I don't think that that's the best habit, because I think that's the way to like get like hernias and like hemorrhoids and all these things to like overexert your asshole when it's not really looking to do anything. So be careful about that, Todd. Don't get too carried away with the auxiliary shits.
I like to poo.
Try to let them be more deliberate.
I don't like to place limitations on my pooing. I like,
no, I hear you.
If I got some in there, it's coming out. Okay, get light.
It's a dangerous game to play.
I'll play it.
When you get older,
I
you'll
like
learn.
danger.
The asshole gets a little more sensitive.
Really, you got to limit your usage.
Just want to be
okay. Sorry to be gross, but I need to clarify this. You actually got a piercing through your urethra.
Yeah. So, how can I explain this? So your dick has, right, this is your dick and this is the head of your dick, and then the top is the hole, right?
Yeah.
And the hole is the end of the urethra, which runs through the dick. So to pierce it, what they did was they put a hollow, like stainless steel, I guess, metal tube in through the hole, in through the urethra, and then they poke it so that it's pushing outside the base of your head, of your penis, and then they poke the needle in through the metal tube. So and then they're running the loop through the base of your head out through your urethra. So it's running through your urethra through the length of the head of your dick.
Wow.
Yeah, and so now that the hardware is out, there's still a hole at the base of the head of my dick, which is a second hole. So now the pee mostly comes out. Like if I go to a place that has a urinal, I'll stand up at the urinal. It's not like I have two streams coming out, but there will sometimes, depending on how hard I'm peeing, there'll be a drip that's coming out the bottom of the head. And at home, it's just easier to sit down. Yeah.
That's impressive that you voluntarily took that pain. It must have hurt very much to get it done. Were you nervous?
It did hurt a lot, and I guess I was nervous. It was like some big hairy Israeli guy, like on the Venice boardwalk, and he said, I was not prepared for this, but it makes sense looking back. But he's like, you got to be like hard to do the piercing. So he gave me like a nudie magazine, told me to go in the back room, And so this is like the like most erotic like circumstance. I'm about to have this big sweaty guy like pierce my dick, and I'm just in the back of some nasty tattoo parlor, like trying to get aroused.
Whoa.
Just so this guy can handle my dick and pierce it. I mean, it was really weird. But I tried my best. And it bled a lot too. And I remember.
Yeah, there's a lot of, especially if you're hard, you got all that blood flow. There must have been a lot of blood.
Yeah, I don't know how hard it would have been by the time it was done, but there was a lot of blood. I made the mistake of wearing these like silk Dallas Cowboys boxers, which just got ruined.
Oh my God.
I don't know why I thought that was a good idea. And then I had to, the cleaning process was I had to basically put salt in a cup of water and put my dick in the salted water and turn the ring, I don't remember how many times a day to do that. But so it would, whatever. It was definitely uncomfortable. So this is another aspect of my character that I think we can touch on here, because this is kind of interesting. But, we've touched on this idea of, having to put yourself out there in order to innovate. That's just kind of the line you have to walk. But I also would get extremely competitive and proud. So how do I tell this? This is kind of embarrassing, but I went to an arts high school, okay? And I went for visual arts, which is cool and makes sense. But my sister went 2 years after I did to the same school, and she went for theater. And my cousin, who I'm very close with, went the year after I did, and he went for theater. And in junior high, I went to like an arts junior high also. I'd done visual arts and I'd done theater. But when I got to high school, they make you choose. They don't let you do two different disciplines, two different clusters, they called them. And so I chose visual arts. That was my natural calling. I only did theater in junior high because they offered it, and I thought I was sort of somewhat interested in it. But my major was visual arts. So in high school, I focused on visual arts. Well, then when my sister came in and did theater, and my cousin came in and did theater, and they started doing plays, and they had there was this prestigious thing called the improv troupe. Everybody wanted to get an improv troupe, but it was very selective and hard to get in. And so I don't even know if I've ever said this. I probably got a little jealous. I'm like, I did theater in junior high. I can do theater. I can do what you guys are doing. And so my junior year of high school, I went to the counselor and I said, I want to do theater. I want to do a split cluster, whatever, which was not something that they really offered, but I kind of demanded it. Oh no, I couldn't do a split cluster. That's right. They didn't let you split. So I switched to theater, which is so bizarre and stupid looking back. But I switched to theater. I tried out for the improv troupe. I got on the improv troupe. I mean, I don't know. I just wanted to show that I could do this stuff, however stupid or proud it was. Well, so in the early 90s, everybody started getting piercings. Like they get their eyebrows pierced, they get their nose pierced, they get their belly button and their nipples pierced. And I thought, this is so corny, And I'm like, I'm going to get the most extreme piercing and just be done with it. Just sort of let everyone know that whatever you're doing, I can do. But
it.
Yeah.
It's
and so
true.
I did. That's what I did. I just went out and I got my dick pierced. And that's honestly, that was my motivation. Just everybody else was doing it. And I just wanted to say, I can do it better. I can do it more.
Wow.
Whatever. I don't know why, I don't know why that is. I don't know why that motivated me, but there you go.
You didn't choose to be Arlo.
Right.
You came out of the vagina and you were Arlo. And
I didn't choose this life. This life chose me.
Yeah. You are what you are.
Well, yes.
Do you have inner conflict about who you are? Do you because I'm sure that you've done a lot of awesome things in your life. Incredible things that you should be very proud of. But you seem to have some shame about some things that you've done. So you must have kind of inner conflict about who you are. A part of you must be very proud and a part of you must be ashamed.
And so we talked about a little bit, right? When I talk about kind of the sort of kicking myself or kind of constantly being embarrassed at my inability to kind of constrain myself sometimes. And, there are times when, on the message boards, when BMAG was a thing and Roller News and all that stuff, one of the complaints I would see often is people would God, Arlo just goes on and he's so, enamored with his own opinion and the sound of his own voice. And it's all true. I get that. I'm also sort of I cringe at that sometimes when I hear it, or when I get interviewed in something like this and I just go on and on. Or black market. It's I kind of get that angle also. And this is kind of one of the burdens or consequences of self-awareness. If you are a self-aware person, if you pay attention and if you make a real effort to have personal growth, then it means also you have to honestly self-evaluate, right? And be aware of who you are, and it's not always pretty. It's not always just a right-on evaluation. It's dude, sometimes what you do is not that cool. And so that's going on constantly. And there's an interesting corollary here between kind of how I evaluate my own personality, but also how you could evaluate rollerblading, because a lot of that happened throughout the entire history of rollerblading, where I was the biggest proponent of rollerblading. I was one of these people helping, develop the culture and all these things. But I was also someone who grew up a skateboarder. And so I was kind of looking at it as an outsider with an outsider's perspective. And even me, when I did the Big Brother thing, it's I have this ability to be the butt of the joke and be genuine and sincere and really believe what I'm saying and know that and believe when I say that I think rollerblading is awesome and believe that. But at the same time, also understand where the skateboarder is coming from when he thinks that it's absurd and looks ridiculous. I can see that too at the same time.
Right.
And you know, when skateboarders make fun of me, when I see, like, when I used to see posts and, like, you know, the sort of the butt of the joke was just, you know, maybe one of those screenshots of me with the bandana or something. It's like, I am that guy. And so it's kind of embarrassing. And it's like, I want to be like, no, you know, that's not me. But at the same time, I get it. Yeah, I am, you know, I am the right butt of the joke. That is the right way to pay off that joke, you know? So, yeah.
I thought that was all, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, but that's just sort of all kind of all comes with awareness, right?
Right.
You see the whole picture. Or as much as you can. I have to acknowledge also that obviously I have blind spots. There are things that I'm not getting, and all we can hope is that, you know, that you keep learning, you keep remaining open to criticism and to new ideas and new perspectives, and that we can fill in those blind spots as much as possible.
Right.
I thought that was always something so refreshing about your personality and your vision of skating, is that it wasn't that traditional action sports personality. Sometimes you listen to these podcasts and everybody sounds the same, talks the same. There's like a voice and an attitude, and your sense of humor and your creativity and maybe the visual arts theater background, it really came through in a lot of the stuff you created and a lot of the stuff that you did.
And the self-criticism as well, the self-awareness. You know, I think that's very important to have those two minds about yourself, to be confident, but also understand that you are goofy at times. You make mistakes. You're silly sometimes. You know, it comes with being an intelligent, open-minded person. Is
right.
You know, you're gonna fail. You're gonna maybe push it too hard, or, you know, I think, yeah, the action sports guy, he's 100% confident in himself at all times. You know, he goes out, he rips, he does his bio 720, he lands it first try, he chugs a beer, and he's off with his hot girlfriend, and everything about him is perfect and cool, and there's no self-deprecation. I'm sometimes jealous of that guy, but at the same time, I do think
that guy has not aged well. I think that guy is more of a self-parody these days than anything else.
Yeah.
Right. He had some good years though, man.
That guy's pretty embarrassing. I love how the meme of you're about to get a hot take in the local news section on Facebook. You know, there's the people taking selfies in their cars with sunglasses. And that one doubles as people who type fruit booter on social media comments, like same age, same look. That action sports guy and those people, like, it's weird how action sports guy merged into that same type of person. Selfies,
100%
sunglasses, cars.
Full confidence. They got all the answers.
Yeah, you know, but it's funny because the truth is, you know, given any group, right, there's always going to be a certain percentage of people that just won't ever go that deep, you know, and it's mostly because it ties into this conversation we're having about self-awareness, but they never even were given the opportunity to kind of broaden their perspective. So they're not aware of their shortcomings or kind of how constrained or limited their view is or their perspective is, which is, I think, always has been kind of one of the nice things, or one of the most, I think, important things about action sports, was that they had the opportunity to bake into the culture this lifestyle element, sort of this artistic element that transcends the actual, just the athletic endeavor, but it turns it into something more that kind of expands awareness and kind of broadens perceptions. And I think you see a lot of that played out, which is why it's doubly unfortunate when action sports people sort of take on that generic bro persona, because they've really missed a lot of the best things that action sports has to offer young people or participants. But on the other hand, you see how it works. So many people come up through skateboarding and rollerblading and the other action sports, and you can really see that they have kind of a more broadened perspective, kind of a more off the beaten path perspective, a little more artistic sensibility. So I think that's a great legacy of action sports.
Yeah. And I think rollerblading in particular, because it was, the ugly stepsister of action sports, we were very, very mocked in the 90s and growing up. I think having that experience of being mocked has forged a lot of very interesting personalities in skating. Whereas like in skateboarding, when they were surrounded by just fans and people giving them compliments and nothing but positive, you're not forced to kind of look at the ridiculous side of things as much. So you get that kind of 100% confident type personality. So I'm happy that we were at the bottom of the barrel because of that, because I think it made us more willing to be mocked and, made us take ourselves less seriously.
So yes, you're absolutely right. And it's an important component of kind of this, what we're sort of loosely or generically referring to as kind of this action sport ethos. But so skateboarders had to go through it, right? Before the X Games and before skateboarders became jocks, essentially, skateboarders were the ones that were marginalized in,
Right.
In their social environment. And they were the outcasts, and it showed in what skateboarding was. That's how they laid the template for what action sports would become.
Right.
BMXers had to go through the same thing also. They were the outcasts for a long time, and they were looked down upon. And now rollerbladers, we are the ones carrying that torch. And it's important because for as much as we say, I just sort of made this argument for, action sports being kind of like this vehicle for kind of like, broadened thought and kind of a wider perspective. But the truth is, with the popularity of the X Games and the popularity of skateboarding, you don't get a whole lot of that on the mainstream level. It's probably why there are so many, bros, right? Action sports bros, because when you are popular and you don't have to go through that trial by fire, and basically that's it. When you are popular, then you're not aware that you don't know what it's like to be unpopular, and so you don't have that added perspective, and so then you just become a bro essentially.
You never have to deal with criticism or being mocked. I think
Right.
dealing with being bullied or being mocked, it's healthy for a person when they're growing up to have to deal with that. If you never have to deal with that, then there's a certain level of growth that you never are forced to have.
Yeah, the growth is important and the perspective is important. The thing is when it's funny because we already had kind of a religion conversation, but all these things are related. So I don't believe in God. That's been covered and established. But I am Jewish. My parents are both Jewish. I was raised Jewish. And I mention that because when you grow up Jewish in a Christian society, and America is predominantly Christian, I mean, it is an important part of the American experience. And when you, by definition, at the very outset, from the moment you're born, are not participating that in the way that everyone else is, you can't help but have a different perspective. And it's a perspective that I didn't ask for, and it's not through any clever thing that I did on my own. It's just by virtue of the fact that I was born outside of the mainstream. I was lucky, but I got to have that perspective to see it as an outsider. And so because I'm in America, I see what everybody else is experiencing. I see Christmas, and I know what it's like to be an American, but I also know what it's like to be outside of that because all the people in my inner circle don't believe it. So then making the leap from not believing what everybody around me believes, what, the predominant Christian religion, which is Christianity, then making the additional leap to, well, not believing anything because, okay, so I don't believe what they all believe, but now I'm supposed to believe that what my parents believe, that is the actual true thing. It seems a lot more likely that just none of it's true. And once you've got that outsider perspective, it's just a lot easier to kind of make those leaps and those connections. But so same thing. If you come up a skateboarder when skateboarding is already in the X Games and it's like the biggest thing, then it's just easy just to believe what the status quo is. Just this is what skateboarding is, and you have no broadened perspective. But if you're a rollerblader coming up and you watch skateboard, you see what that is, but you also know what it feels like to be outside of that. Then you've got this much broader perspective and this much wider sense of what it means to participate in action sports, and kind of, because action sports should be an outsider endeavor. It should be an outsider activity. But if you come up as a skateboarder now in it, it's really hard to get that experience.
Right.
And so I don't even know what that means, because so the real question is, what we should be asking is, so what are skateboarders doing to preserve it? Because what we should want for rollerblading is that rollerbladers have the same kind of success. You know, we'll be back in the X Games, rollerbladers will be making millions of dollars, but how do you preserve that outsider element? And these were all the conversations we were having when X Games came on the scene.
Right.
You know, Big Brother. It's why I've always loved Big Brother so much. Why I identified so. I thought what they were doing was so important, because Big Brother, you know, at its peak, the sequences in the magazine were great. They were on the cutting edge of this movement in skateboarding to street skating and to like really technical street skating. And they would have these long photographic sequences where you would see, you know, really technical tricks being executed in the magazine, like stuff that you would only see in videos before. Now in the magazine, you can see these really technical sequences. And that was really cool. But they also had the really countercultural, like really extreme cultural editorial element. And so you've got this really impressive athletic activity going on right next to this really challenging, kind of provocative editorial material. And this is what an action sport should be. This is what a counterculture activity should be. It should be something that scares your parents, that people that ESPN can't put on prime time, right? By definition, it is countercultural. And then you have this weird thing where if you take Big Brother kind of as this perfect sort of countercultural action sport model, and then it sort of starts getting pulled in two directions, where you start pulling this extremely technical, really impressive skill set, and you've got just the X Games, right? You put that on TV, and you've got this, and there's no cultural element anymore. There's no dangerous editorial. It's just the impressive sport. Well, that's the X Games. You start pulling it the other way, you just sort of got this dangerous, like really absurd countercultural, like editorializing, and you've got Jackass, right? There's no more there. It's not grounded in any. It's not grounded to the sport anymore. Now it's just the jackassery going on. But even Jackass lost kind of the countercultural element, because then it became just absurdity without any really. Because what was important about Big Brother, one element that it was doing, and that any action sport at its best does, is it's not just absurd for its own sake. It's not provocative just to be provocative, but it's really defending kind of like these artistic ideals where there has to be a check on what happens kind of in mainstream culture, where we offer a counterbalance and say that there's a different way of looking at and evaluating social norms. There has to be room for different ideas. And I think artists as expressed through the counterculture, through action sports, I think that's where it's most valuable. And so all that is what the point I was getting at is, so if you had to build it perfectly, even if rollerblading was as successful as skateboarding, if it was everything we wanted it to be, how do you protect those ideals? How do you bake them in to the fabric of the sport so that no matter how big it gets, you still are promoting those ideals?
I've always struggled with those two sides, especially as I get older. I'll admit to you guys, I believed in Santa Claus maybe 1 year longer than most kids.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of transitioned into my believing in rollerblading longer than, while lots of people were quitting, I still believed so hard in making videos and being a part of the culture. But then I got to a certain age where the lifestyle or the culture part of it, I struggled with becoming an adult, but still believing in rollerblading and having it a part of my life. And that's been super hard. I've made the transition now, but it's so weird to try and keep the lifestyle part of it, or those ideals, those creative free things, while being an adult with a job and you're talking to other adults, and like you want to be provocative and you want to do funny things. And it's so hard to mesh the two as you get older. It's something I've consistently struggled with, to the point where I wish there was just an alter ego or different person that can make the videos and be the rollerblader. And then I have adult Joey doing all the adult work stuff. Kind of related to, you know, can you do provocative ideas at work? Not really, but yeah. Arlo, I believed in rollerblading so hard that it was almost a bad thing in my life for a while, where I had to refigure out my relationship to it. Do you know what I'm talking about, Todd?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have a unrealistic view of what it means to be a rollerblader and what it means to be a skateboarder. You know, in your late teens, early 20s, you might think that it means a lot more than it does, or you might rely on it more than you should for your sense of identity and, you know, your sense of accomplishment in this world. I think it can if it can be detrimental to exist in that bubble of rollerblading or skateboarding, whatever that bubble is, where you're just surrounded by your peers and you're not getting outside influence, and you think like the people living the normal lives, they're lame, they don't know what's up, they haven't seen the new 4x4 video, they're not in the know, and you almost discredit their experience. It's, yeah, I think, but I also relate this conversation to parenting. I think like you want your child to grow up and be safe and have positive social experiences, and you want them to be popular so they have a good time like at school and stuff. But on the flip side, you want them to have adversity. You want them to go through hard things. You want them to be made fun of. You want them to fail so that they learn to deal with those hardships. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what I'm saying, but it goes back to Arlo asking, like, how do you preserve that culture of being, you know, uncool, being unpopular, but you also want rollerblading to be popular. It's two, you know, opposite philosophies. And I don't know what the answer is, but it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. So you guys have inspired a couple of ideas. One, I mostly disagree with something that Todd said, and I mostly agree with something that Joey said. But so I think that when you're 18 and 19 and you're a teenager, that is the right time to be idealistic, to exaggerate things, to have a very maybe insulated view of the world. When I was 19, I did know everything, and I was really confident in my vision for the world and the right path and all those things. And looking back, right, I can be very judgmental, and I see the fault in my ways. But at the time, it was really profound, and I felt it. Like Joey said, he felt something. I felt it very passionately, and it drove me. And you know, when you're at that age, that's when, you know, music is most influential. That's the music that you're going to like for the rest of your life. It's happening right then. I mean, that's when you are receptive to kind of what the world is offering. It's when you're sort of shaping the kind of person you're going to be, which is why that's the time when it's important for there to be something like rollerblading or action sports that exist, because the kids are going to be looking for things. Either they're going to be football players, they're going to be soccer players, they're going to get into skateboarding, they're getting into rollerblading. So the action sports have an opportunity to capture those kids and to provide kind of this worldview to them that is different and interesting, and I think healthy. Yes, we want everyone to continually grow and evolve, and at some point they will look back on their teenage days and go, "Man, I probably was a little extreme with it then." But really, what we're talking about is the foundation, that foundational moments, laying the foundation for the kind of person they'll become. And even if it's a bit much in the moment, really what it's doing is it's laying that groundwork so that they'll become the kind of person who is always thoughtful, always inquisitive, keeps growing, and keeps a broad perspective. So in that way, Joey, kind of to kind of dovetail off of what you were saying, it's like, so what happens when we become adults? You know, I still love rollerblading. I want to go out with my daughter, but when I go out skating with my daughter, I don't want to go out there and just tell her, you know, destroy all girls and kick, break windows, whatever. It's not, I'm not trying to be what's it called, an angry youth, right? I'm just going to go out and enjoy skating with my daughter. So there is room for us, and in these sports, to kind of grow and move out and sort of occupy different spaces. But I think at the genesis, I think the thing pushing skating at the sort of the living core, the soul of it, should always be the young people doing it, honestly and authentically and however they see fit. And it's not going to be with the full benefit of, hindsight and the full awareness of all the history and all these things, but it shouldn't be. There's got to be like an anger and a passion and just sort of a rawness to it. That's the fire at the heart of the thing that keeps the sport alive. And then we will all have our things that we add, we will round out this like broad industry and make it a broad, a comprehensive culture. But that heart, that core needs to be kind of the youth always. Even if it means there's not a place for, because I always get people coming to me from my generation, or, Josh Petty comes to me, Chris Edwards, Brooke wants to restart sin. It's like all these people, it's like they always feel like, we got to tell the youth, like we got to get them back on track. They don't know what they're doing. It's like, fuck no. We're the ones that don't know.
Yeah.
It's up to them. And the things that we think we know, it has no, they don't need to hear it. Let them steer it,
Yeah. They're the youth.
Yeah.
Like they have, it is so refreshing to see that vision of skating from a youthful perspective that hasn't been educated and beaten down by the world. They're just 100%, confident in what they're doing, and they're idealistic, they're passionate. I think, 100%, like it's important for kids, for young teens, to be really passionate about something.
Yeah.
And I do think it's okay to be really idealistic and, narrow-minded when you're that age. I think that's a good thing. If you're switched on and you're curious and, all those things, it's gonna, over the years, it's gonna create a healthy, strong person. It's a good foundation for life. I worry that there aren't enough young people getting into this sport, or I want more youth in rollerblading. It does seem top heavy right now.
It is. It is. I mean, it's tough without the X Games, without Airborne, without Brink. I mean, without something out there garnering mass mainstream exposure, it's hard to draw in the numbers. It's hard to on y'all in big numbers. You need something like that. It's just the fact of it.
I want those teenage crews. I want
I
those
have that
teenage
dream
crews.
too. We have a dream in Kamloops of one day driving by and just seeing some kids sessioning a rail when we're 50. And it's possible. There's a skate park in every little town.
It's accessibility. That's a huge thing. I think, scooters are thriving right now because they're so accessible. It's so easy to buy one in any town. They're available. Skates are a little bit more personal. You need the right size, you need the right fit. So we need more skate shops.
You know what? I should say though, I should clarify that a lot of things we're talking about, we're mostly talking about North America, because in Europe and in some other places abroad, the scenes are more healthy than they are here. You will find the pockets of crews skating right around the city. I think we've just been harder hit here, and it's probably mostly due to the influence of the X Games, because once we lost the X Games, we lost a lot. But in Europe, they still have some big, multi-sport events where rollerblading is included.
Yeah, that is true.
Mm-hmm. Did you come up with roller sports? Was that your thing? Was that your push at Senate roller sports?
Not sure. Maybe.
Okay.
Because I
remember
so many different ways, so many different times. It's hard to keep track of which ones
Well, I think you had a vision where a kid would go
Yeah.
into a store that in the future, which we're in now, and it never happened, that you would go into a store and you could pick rollerblades, a skateboard, or a BMX, and then the things just stayed apart for the most part.
Yeah, I
Still.
definitely, there definitely was a push at Senate. You know, it sort of came along with Randy, like where we moved from being this like kind of like in my model where it was sort of like angry, like kind of punk attitude, with Randy where it became sort of like a little more polished, a little more athletic, and roller sports would have been part of that push, that idea.
Oh, go
Yeah.
ahead.
Do you think that could still happen? Have,
What?
you know, like some kind of universal roller sports shop where all of the options are available: skateboards, rollerblades, bikes.
Yes, absolutely. We had it. My skate park in Dallas for 15 years. That's the
Yeah.
retail shop. That's what it was: rollerblades,
Right.
skateboards, and scooters. Yeah, absolutely. It's just, I think that I don't think that the stigmas, as far as like the intersport rivalries, are as gnarly as they used to be.
Definitely not.
Now it'd probably be more a matter of economics. Like if someone, because that's a lot of different inventory you've got to keep in stock, and especially skates are especially difficult because you have to carry sizes. So
Yeah.
unless there's a big market for it, there's probably not going to be. It's probably not happening anytime soon. But if if rollerblading gets back in the X Games, you could easily imagine sort of an X Games style store that has that services action sports.
Right.
So you get a lot of people hitting you up with rollerblading on the rise. Are you getting an increase in requests for things like including, I mean, obviously podcasts, but weird business ideas or promote this thing? So there's a flood recently.
Yep.
You're feeling it more. I mean, you probably got it a lot over the years and then it dipped. So 2020 specifically, you're getting hit up.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about that? I mean, because you're still the face of rollerblading, whether you like it or not. And you're not a Tony Hawk type character. Arlo is somebody different, but you're still the guy that everybody goes to. We kind of talked, but do you struggle with that, being Arlo the rollerblader? Because you're not a rollerblader every day. People are still coming to you as the face.
Well, there's kind of a couple of different ideas in there that we would have to unpack. I mean, I'm comfortable with my relationship with rollerblading. I know that I'm associated with it, and I'm proud of that. I love the legacy that I have in rollerblading, and I love my association with it because I'm very proud of rollerblading. But as far as the people coming to me for things, I mean, it's not like Speed Stick is coming to me because they have a new ad campaign and they want to feature rollerblading, and I'm just the face of rollerblading. It's my friends coming to me. It's people that that I've known for a long time that are either getting nostalgic or they're wanting to bring things back, and they see me as I could either I have something to contribute, or I'm sort of integral to the thing. Like if Brooke or Mark Heineken want to bring back Senate, obviously it makes sense that I would be involved with that. And each of them separately have approached me about it. And I'm not interested in bringing back Senate, for a lot of the reasons that we've already talked about. I'm far more interested in what the next generation of skaters have to do. I'm not really that interested in bringing back these legacy brands. If I want to do something new, if I make a line of drug receipt shirts, which I'd be making, not to be a rollerblading brand, it's just I've had a couple of releases. I make 12 shirts in my garage because I like to produce. I like to keep creating stuff. And so if rollerbladers buy those, great. And if I do a run of drug receipt shirts and rollerbladers buy them, cool. I'd be really happy about that. And I know that there's a market for it. But it's just something new. It's just sort of a natural evolution of kind of stuff that I'm doing. But if I came back with a line of Senate shirts, to me, that would feel kind of regressive, kind of like a money grab, trying to cash in on, nostalgia. And for one thing, I don't think that the rollerblading industry is big enough to support nostalgia necessarily. There are enough people trying to make new brands and like support actual current wheel companies that they don't need a brand like Senate siphoning off those limited dollars that are out there. Um, but on the other hand, it's like, I don't, for me, it doesn't feel like a good look. Like, I don't want to, again, for all these reasons we've already discussed, I don't want to look like an old rollerblader coming in trying to exercise some kind of influence on the rollerblading industry as if I have anything new to offer. You know what I mean? I think it's better off in the hands of a new generation. And it's not to say that older rollerbladers don't have anything to contribute or offer. You know what I mean? It's just, for me personally, it's not where my interests lie. I don't have much interest in looking back and rerunning some of the legacy brands.
That makes me really happy that you have that's that self-awareness again. I just think,
For sure.
I don't call things whack very often, but Senate coming back would be very whack. And like, I've poked fun at some of that stuff over the years on Instagram, the nostalgia thing and the OG Blader attitude. It's stale and it's fine in little bits, but yeah, you would have lost at least 5 to 15% credibility with me if you brought Senate back. I don't know what, maybe more.
Yeah, with me too.
Yeah.
With me too.
So along that same theme, like there's a lot of there's a lot of negativity from OG rollerbladers about the current state of skating. You know, where are the hammers? You know, is this what skating is now? How do you feel about where rollerblading is right now? The types of tricks that are being done, the technology, the culture. How do you feel about it?
I mean, I'm a big fan of rollerblading. I love it. I love to watch it. And I feel like rollerblading, like, so with my generation, when we skated, we used to dream about what would be possible, right? And you'd go to a spot and you would say, you know, someday someone's going to be able to do that rail. Or you would say, someday people are going to do this, you know, they're going to spin and then land on that rail, you know, all these things. And you would dream about what was possible. When I watch rollerblading now, I don't dream about or think about what's going to be possible. It looks like it's fully realized, it's fully baked as a sport. When I watch Damon Franklin or Joe Atkinson, you know, these guys, or even Montre, the kind of skating that they are doing, which like encompasses all aspects of skating. You know, they're flipping and spinning and doing really technical stuff, but also doing really beautiful stuff and graceful stuff. And it's like, it's the whole bag, like all in one package. It's everything that, for me, but also I feel like for our generation, that we could have ever imagined or dreamed of or hoped for the sport, and more. I mean, it looks even like, when you're imagining it, you can't imagine what it's going to look like, but it's even better. It actually looks effing incredible. So I don't get anyone who has any complaints about rollerblading. It looks so good to me. It's so impressive. And then on top of that, you add the reality, this unfortunate political reality, where these are guys doing the most incredible things that have ever been done on skates, some of the most incredible things that have been done in action sports. And for what? I mean, they're not getting paid, right? Some of them get to live this like Don Quixote lifestyle, and they're traveling the world and skating and doing what they love, which is great. And it's an incredible opportunity. But yeah, they should also be making some money also, you know? So hopefully, you know, that will correct itself, and the exposure and the money will come back to rollerblading. But the actual trick vocabulary and the state of the sport from an actual athletic perspective and what's being done on skates, I mean, I have no complaints. It's incredible. And, you know, in particular, like, rollerblading was so grind heavy for so long. It's so refreshing to me now to see what you guys are doing with wizard skating, but also the acrobatic elements, how, you know, the aerial elements that we frowned upon for so long. Like, we thought the flips were uncool, but now they are being featured so prominently. And so, like, when you like I keep referring to Damon because he's at Venice Beach, like this, we've talked about like Jesse Martinez and like how Venice was like sort of this, epicenter of action sports and the skateboarding stronghold. And now they built this whole skate park out there, and he's out there doing it. And you can tell when they show these videos, the crowds that are around, they're so impressed by what he's doing, which they wouldn't be, 15 years ago if he was out there doing soul grinds, around the bowl corner. Rollerblades would go, yeah, that's so cool. But
Right.
now he can do that and then, pump out of it and then do a couple more walls and then just blast out of the bowl. And he's doing, a grab laid out backflip or whatever, and then so people get the crescendo, they go, whoa. And so that's cool. That's excitement. You want that in rollerblading. And I feel like for a long time, we had kind of like we had elements, but we didn't have the full package fully baked. And it is now. Joe Atkinson's is another one. I mean, the things that he finds and the way that he approaches a spot, and even if it's not, you watch him on a feast course and he can flip and spin and do every kind of, aerial trick there is. And it's so impressive. But then you put him in a bowl and the way he carves it and pumps it and the lines he puts together, and he's got the dramatic crescendo moments that he can throw into it, but the flowing in between and the building up, it all looks so poetic and lyrical and like, so natural and fluid. I mean, dude, I have no complaints about rollerblading. It looks great.
I agree.
There's in a lot of the media now, it looks mature, and it looked mature-ish in some moments in the past, but it's like, wow, we have older people doing it. It looks mature, it looks refined, and the variety is incredible.
Yeah. People complain about, when you mentioned the complaint about there aren't hammers, and like people talk about Alex's old KFC sections and like how gnarly his skating was. But when I look at Alex now, anything that he puts out, it doesn't matter what he's doing. It looks so cool. Like for me, for a long time in rollerblading, there was such an emphasis on tricks that the skating never really looked that good. I mean, people would look terrible rolling up to and away from a trick. But the fact that Alex makes skating look so good, just the act of skating, that's a huge accomplishment. So yeah, I have no complaints.
Winding down, I just want to thank you. Years ago, I sent you weird emails about, we had this video called "Okay, Buddy, Fuck Whatever." No, seriously though, how to be unpopular. And I'm not great at communicating my ideas through writing, and I know you got lots of messages from people to watch the video, blah, blah, blah. But we sent you the video, and I think the cover caught your attention, and there was a really encouraging email that you sent back, and you were a big part of us continuing to go down the path, because you were someone who we really respected your opinion and your outlook, and the fact that you liked that video helped a trajectory for a long time, just continuing to go in that direction. So thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and thank you, and thanks for everything that you guys are doing and have done. I'll never forget receiving that video. I mean, I really loved it a lot, and it had a profound impact on me. We've talked a lot about, the vision of rollerblading and how happy I am with, and how proud we can be of where it is now. Like it is sort of the dream realized. Well, seeing what you guys had produced, right? Something totally outside of our bubble, right? Our sphere of influence, all the people that I was, we had magazines, we had videos. Here was something that came from another pocket and had its own vision from rollerblading. And all the things that, from this conversation, it should be clear, the things that I really value and that I really wanted for rollerblading, like this fresh perspective, kind of this breaking the mold, this fearlessness of vision, not being afraid to be different or to stand out or to look weird or to have judgment passed on you. I mean, all these things that you guys captured, and out of left field, like people that I did not know, the fact that could happen, that rollerblading could catch on somewhere, and that people could have their own like fearless vision of what it could be and put it on film. And like, dude, I loved it so much. And it's why, I've watched what you guys have done through the years, because from then on, I was like a fan and kind of believed in what y'all were doing. And now to this day, how y'all have really pushed even your own fearlessness, your own vision for skating kind of into its own whole movement. And I've said this, several times in other podcasts, where I feel like skating has kind of caught up to where you guys were going, where, you don't see these hard, rigid boundaries anymore so much between different styles of skating. It's all like fun with wheels on your feet, different things you can do with the wheels on your feet. So there's no question that you guys have been a hugely influential factor in kind of like the evolution of skating and allowing us kind of to arrive where we're at, where the best of skating represents all of skating. So thank you guys.
Wow. Thank you. And in the email, you made an Arlo joke. You said, contact my friend Ezekiel Anderson. He might be able to help you out.
Nice.
You couldn't help yourself.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that was key for getting Cirque du Soleil like distributed.
Yeah.
On DVD.
Good.
So yeah.
Thank you. You got it.
That was all you. That was huge for us.
Cool.
And I don't have anything else. You don't have to talk about concrete. We got this far. You don't have to talk about the reaching down towards the camera shot. But
give me your hand. That movie was so ridiculous. So there was no script, there was no nothing. Evan from T-Bone just wanted to make a proof of concept, basically make a trailer that he could kind of shop around and make the movie. But so it was just these weird little vignettes, these scenes, like, and he would say, and I told you that I in junior high I did theater and then I switched into theater, but I'm not an actor. I don't know how to act. I'm not a good actor at all. And so throwing me into these things and telling me, like, and at the time I didn't even realize what a cliche "give me your hand" is, like in movies. I mean, obviously I've seen it so many times now. That whole thing was so funny. But I did get to make out with a girl, which was cool for the film. Yeah, whatever. It's a bizarre little like footnote on, in the history of rollerblading.
do you remember any of your lines from the trailer?
Zach, that's my main man, or something like that.
I think
Like I'm talking about Brian Smith.
Isn't it like, so you want to know something about my world, or step into my world? Let me tell you something about my generation.
Yeah, something like that.
Dun,
You want to know? Yeah.
So good.
That's
so good. We ate it up here. Well, Todd, do you have anything else? I think we had a good run here.
That was awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. This was very enjoyable. Very good conversation.
How long have we gone? What's the time code on this?
3 hours.
11, 12, 12 to 1, 1 to 2. Yeah, over 3 hours. That's pretty good.
3 hours.
That's
good.
Really good.
Yeah. And
Minus the pee break.
Yeah, that's right. Oh yeah.
It was really enjoyable to listen to you guys pee while I peed. I think that was the highlight for me.
It was definitely a special moment that we shared.
It was really special.
It was special. Yeah.
I'm glad that we got to have
three-way pee.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great moment to end 2020.
Yes.
Yeah. A spiritual melding of our peas.
A release.
A release, yeah.
Cathartic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much. This was great.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Arlo. And now you won't have to do one of these for a really long time, theoretically.
What episode is this?
255, I think.
Okay, cool. So I'll see you around 500.
For sure. Let's do it.
Sounds like a plan.
All right. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you.
Have a great day, Arlo. Bye.